Hey everyone, Joe Waxman, the astrologer. Eh, what's up, everyone? Hope you're doing well. In this video, I want to look at Saturn through all the houses. Guys, before I begin, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Book a reading with me, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. That's my email address. And leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Say something nice, hopefully. Um, so what is Saturn? I mean, you guys probably know what Saturn is by now, I hope, but let's just give a brief overview of what Saturn is. On the low end, Saturn is really, 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 really tough. Nobody likes their Saturn. Sometimes I'm like, what if we could get rid of Saturn? Like, but no, I mean, it's not a real, I don't really think that, but sometimes it feels that way, right? Because Saturn is restriction, right? Saturn is no. If we want to put it in one word, Saturn, no. Saturn will deny us. Saturn will make life very difficult for us. Saturn, in the worst possible case, can be actual disaster or death, even, right? Like I've seen cases where Saturn will kill you, right? Yeah, so Saturn can be like any sort of external organization or group, the law or something like that, and in a very harmful way. It can be a judge, right? A judge handing you out a difficult sentence, right? Life in prison. It is, yeah, it's the law, it's authority, it's older people. So it can show up as like parents or grandparents or bosses or uh authority figures, anything like that. um it can provide a lot of um on the upper end authority, right? If it's well aspected, if it's dignified, it can give you a lot of authority, it can give you a lot of leadership, it can make you work really hard and develop, especially over time, right? Saturn shines over time, it rules time, right? So like young people have a very difficult time with Saturn usually, unless it's well dignified and well aspected. But even then, even if your Saturn's really strong, like in Capricorn or whatever, wherever it's placed, it's still going to make you work really hard. It's just that if it's dignified, then you have better karma with it. You're probably going to adapt to it a lot easier. And if it's not well dignified, you're going to be struggling with that for a long time, right? And wherever it is in your house, in your chart, whatever sign and house, in that area, that's the area where you're going to have the most restriction, right? The least amount of fun, the most amount of work, the most amount of frustration, denial. Um, but again, like I said, it can make you a leader, it can make you a boss, right? It can make you well respected in your field, especially like if it's well dignified, if it's well aspected, right? Then people want to listen to you. Somebody with like Saturn and Capricorn or Aquarius, naturally they gain a lot more respect, right, from other people. Like they say something and other people are like, oh yeah, well, he's worth listening to, and they don't even know why. They're just like, well, yeah, I believe you, right? You're a natural authority. Authority is kind of like one of the key words for Saturn. Um, Saturn will endure things, make things last longer, right? So like writing a novel versus a short story, right? Or in science, Saturn often shows up a lot with Mercury, right? It's a very solidifying or contracting influence. It makes things hard and solid, right? So if you combine like Mars and Neptune, it can be like taking something very fantastical and dreamy and making it into physical, right? Um, Mars, Saturn and Mars can be very aggressive and physical, um, and challenging and difficult. Saturn and Mercury can be very scientific, right? Saturn and Jupiter can be like scientific philosophy, combining those two sides of things, right? Saturn and Venus can be like creating something artistic in a more concentrated way, very refined, right? Um, or it can limit sort of the Venusian excessiveness, right? Somebody with Saturn and Venus might be more restrained as far as their indulgences. Um, what else? Um, it can make people stiff. It can make people cold. It can make people distant. It can make people hardworking. It can make people more even like sharp or aggressive. I've seen it show up in like um more like with musicians who play heavier, darker music, more aggressive, but not always, right? It can manifest differently with different people. Um, what else? Um, yeah, I think we'll get a better idea once we look at the houses and we'll see all the different examples. And there's many different ways it can show up, right? But yeah, on the low end, like really, really tough Saturn. On the high end, the total like, authority, leader, capacity, expert, right? Saturn is the planet of expert because it makes you work so much in a certain area, right? And it's slow progress. Like you can't progress quickly in anywhere that Saturn is. It's going to make you progress slowly over time, right? So you can't rush it. So anyway, let's begin. I got 48 charts and we're going to do 4 for each house. So starting off, we got Lana Del Rey. And I'm not going to go in depth into any of the charts because there's too many, 48 charts. And so we're just going to get like a taste of each person, 4 for each house. So you'll get like a pretty well-rounded, I think, idea of what it means to have Saturn in each house. And I tried to choose different ones, some working better, some working worse, right? But first off, it's Lana Del Rey. And one of the things about Lana Del Rey is that on stage, on screen, she's kind of stiff. She's Saturnian, right? And she got a lot of criticism for that, especially like she did like one performance on SNL where she was just like kind of robotic, stiff, you know. That's Saturn, right? Saturn causes fear. That's another indicator, significator of Saturn. There's a lot of fear and apprehension, right? And you just like don't feel good enough wherever your Saturn is, and you're just like, so it can hold you back there. It can make a person very skeptical and denying like whatever its significations are in that house, in that area. Um, if it's retrograde, it's definitely going to cause even more delays, right? And Lana Del Rey also had a difficult go of things. Like she had to change her name. She changed her whole identity, basically. That's a retrograde thing, especially Saturn. Also Scorpio, transformation, right? Um, yeah. She does have some good aspects on her ascendant, so it's not just Saturn, it's Jupiter and Venus also, which is really nice. Um, and by the way, this is my prediction. She's gonna fall in love with someone if she hasn't already, and they're gonna be, her everything. Um, and that'll happen within sometime next 10 years, within that period. That's my prediction. Less than 10 years. Um, but yeah, what else? Third and fourth Lord. Um, so I don't know like the details about this, but this could be something with her family, her home, her youth, and her probably, starting young. That's one indicator. Fourth Lord in the first house means can be something about youth. You find your identity through your family or your youth when you're young, or hometown. Um, their Lord could be like about, I don't know, if she writes, I think she writes her own music, right? Yeah, that would be an indicator there. But just generally, Saturn makes her kind of stiff and hard. Also dark, right? It is Scorpio, but Saturn is going to add a lot of darkness and heaviness. And like, that's one of the things about her. She's so like kind of watery, mysterious, deep. And it's like, um, uh, yeah, very like almost depressing kind of music, but it's unique to her, and the retrogrades definitely make it a lot more unique as well. But it's also that multiplicity of like starting over the retrogrades. Let's keep going. Next up, we got Carl Jung. All right. So it's also Saturn retrograde. Here it is in Aquarius, square Pluto. So that would be a difficult aspect. I mean, got a really nice trine from Jupiter that's going to help it out a lot. But so Saturn in the first also going to make him more Saturnian, right? Aquarius, much more intellectual, um, abstract thinking, theoretical, but scientific at the same time, right? Saturn is going to make him more skeptical about a lot of whatever spirituality, or I mean, even though he was open to all that, he wasn't completely like I heard one story about he went to meet this famous Indian guru, Ramana Maharshi, with a bunch of people, and he was actually afraid to meet him. He wouldn't there was like some apprehension there, because actually Ramana Maharshi was completely enlightened, one of the most enlightened beings of the modern 20th century, um way beyond Carl Jung. um and so yeah, there's that fear, that skepticism or limitation from Saturn. Saturn's retrograde, so it's also going to delay his growth, his maturity, till he's older. But it's going to add a lot of especially in Aquarius, it's going to give him a lot of authority and respect. All right, right, which we have, right? His name is a well-respected name. The square to Pluto is going to be very heavy duty. Um, and then Pluto brings in the psychological qualities, Jupiter, the philosophical, right? So this is kind of like scientific philosophy, psychology, right? All mixing together in a unique way, right? In some harmonious, some difficult aspects, but all within range of each other. These three planets working together. Planets at a particular degree, doesn't matter the sign or the house. If they're all at a degree, they will all work together, right? If you had another one here in Gemini 23, another one here at Cancer, another one here at Leo, whatever house, doesn't matter. Whatever sign, whatever house. If it's 23, if it's within range, that'll work. It doesn't matter. Semi-sextile, inconjunct, any aspect. It'll still connect, right? The tighter the aspect, the more easily it'll connect. Let's see. So yeah, so Saturn's ruling the 12th and the first. So also like bring in that subconscious mind into the conscious first house, right? So he's now exploring his own subconscious and applying that to psychology, right? So yeah, and it works. Works well. All right. Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. Okay. Also Saturn Scorpio. Um, yeah, what's interesting is so like Lana Del Rey has a retrograde. Um, and but she obviously the Mars is in Cancer for Lana Del Rey, and it's direct, and here it's in Libra. So anyway, she's gonna be much more intellectual, Margaret Thatcher, and much more like authoritarian, and the non-retrograde is much is because that's going to make her go along with the crowd now. So now she's with the sun, right? She's going along with the sun, which is society, right? So she's not thinking counterculture, she's not thinking like let's break the rules, let's be a rebel. She's like, I'm going to be an authority with the sun. So she, especially because her ascendant lord Mars is in the same sign as the sun, not good dignity here, but it's still Libra, it's still like, and if she still has this very powerful Scorpio ascendant, with Saturn here, Saturn ruling, leading, authority. She was the prime minister of the UK, I think twice, right? She was a big deal. And then she's got these similar to Jung planets at the same planets, actually, Jupiter and Pluto, different signs. Actually, that's interesting, because Jupiter's already in poor dignity here, but exalted in Pluto. So Jupiter is really helping out Pluto through this opposition. Although some might say, well, it's not capable in Capricorn. I still think there's some ability for that. But anyway, all these planets are going to work together, right? Authoritarian Saturn, especially in Scorpio, it's very controlling and powerful, right? Saturn in Scorpio, not necessarily the most dignified, but definitely powerful and strong and like strong-willed, fixed Scorpio, right? Jupiter and Capricorn, still really good for leadership, right? Capricorn, Jupiter, very mature. And then the Pluto, the strategy, the desirous control, the deep psychology, bring these all into play together. So you have to look at planets at the same degree, no matter the aspect. Another one, just totally different, Mick Jagger. Saturn does okay in Gemini, right? Because it has triplicity rulership. So it does well in air signs, right? Saturn, generally speaking, exalted in Libra, domicile in Aquarius, triplicity in Gemini. It's pretty good, right? So anyway, yeah, Saturn, it's direct, right? It's not retrograde. And he wasn't like, look, I like Mick Jagger, but their music was status quo. It really was. Like, you might disagree, you might be from that era, and you might be like, no, they were revolutionary, groundbreaking, still kind of blasé, still kind of boring. I mean, if you're being really honest, it's like radio music. They're a good radio band, but like, you know, who cares? Like, they were just going along with the flow. And look how many it's like boring kind of rock and roll. Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to put him down, but I'm just trying to explain the sort of direct influence that he has. He's going along with the sun. I mean, he's so Leo with the sun here, and Leo, it's just like everything's together, everything's flowing. He's just like, let's just make good rock and roll. And that's all they did. They didn't do anything revolutionary or groundbreaking. I mean, as far as like moving the needle forward with rock and roll, sure. But yeah, it wasn't retrograde, is what I'm trying to say. It wasn't really that really, really unique, independent, pure form. The pure stuff, right? But Saturn's ruling is MC. Saturn's ruling is eighth house. So eighth, ninth, eighth and ninth whole sign houses, but the quadrants are eighth, ninth, and 10th. So Saturn's a big deal for him. It's ruling a lot of houses, especially his MC, which is ninth house. So it's adventure, right? And travel and celebrations, right? I mean, I don't know if you could bring in philosophy into that. I don't really see Mick Jagger as very philosophical, although maybe he is, right? Maybe he's sort of religious, but the other indication would be just like a very adventurous life that is full of celebrations and good luck. And I mean, the MC is trine the ascendant, not exact, but it's very close. So that is his calling is very harmonious with who he is as a person. It's just like a very abundantly lucky, happy life, especially if this is going to be well aspected, which it is. All these planets are opposite, kind of. It's not Venus, but I mean Mercury, Pluto, Jupiter. Let's see what else. Uranus aspecting the MC, and the ascendant itself is within range. So it's all of these are activating the career, making it strong. Saturn just makes him not only long lasting, which he is, Mick Jagger in the Rolling Stones, like they just don't die, they'll just live forever, right? Him and Keith Richards. It's making him a boss, an authority. And yeah, Uranus is making him more like, unique, rebellious, revolutionary. So there is that, but it's just still direct. It's not the pure. It's not the pure stuff, right? It's watered down. Watered down. Anyway, no, I'm just teasing. Maybe I'm a little biased because I have a lot of retrogrades, but whatever. Good for them. Good for Mick Jagger. He's so direct. All right. What else? Yeah. There's probably a lot more that we could dig out of this. But I'm not sure what else to say. We got the duration, the length, and also just like sort of being a boss, being a rock and roll boss. captain. Saturn, long lasting, enduring, leader, rock and roll kind of thing. Sexy, eighth house. I know they want to put it in the fifth house, but it's still the eighth house. So, yes, all of astrology can be wrong. All right, let's move on to the second house. And we got Kanye West, Mr. Yay. Mr. Yay. Last thing I heard about him is that he wants to start a porn website. This guy's nuts. But don't expect consistency from Kanye West. Right. So Saturn in his second house. So this is really funny. I was online, just a little anecdotal story. I was online and like somebody was posting about like ascendant, this ascendant's like this, that's ascendant's like that, and they're relating it to style. I'm like, actually, style comes from the second house, the way we dress, the way we appear, our adornments, the hair, the makeup, the clothes, the hat, the shoes, the jewelry, the watches, you know, the look, the presence, right? It's also the voice. It's how we show up. It's what we put on after we're, you know, after the first house, which is the first house would be us naked, right? You see Venus on the ascendant, it's a beautiful woman, especially if it's a woman, right? Venus on the ascendant makes somebody beautiful, right? But they don't need to put on any makeup for that. They don't need to dress up. But if you put Venus on the second house, you're gonna be sure they're dressing up. They're gonna be fine, right? They're gonna wear their hair, the makeup, the jewelry. They're gonna look fine. They're gonna look beautiful. But that's all secondary, right? So, and these are representative of our assets and resources, right? The second house, right? So Saturn and Leo. You always see Kanye West dressing in the weirdest shit. Like it's just like, but that's Saturn in Leo because it doesn't work that well. It's always like you know, like really, really weird stuff. Like these over like bloated, like these big, like fat outfit, like which is like he looks like he's like 800 pounds, like because the everything's expanded and bloated. That's not really that's Saturn in Leo. It's just not. It's not working well. Um, I mean, it's all different things. Like other times he's like dressed in black and it's like masked up, like weird fashion and stuff. But it's also trine Neptune, so that's a part of it, right? And there's also, I guess, South Node, part of Fortune, MC. But yeah, the Neptune is sort of corrupting the Saturnian influence or changing it, altering it, right? So you get this really weird. Saturn doesn't work that well in Leo, right? I have Saturn in Leo, so it's tough. It's not a great, it's not a great common or a difficult combination, I should say, right? And he does have money problems, right? He lost like $2 billion from like, you know, just doing all that from things he said, a Gemini thing, you know, like getting in trouble from what you speak, right? But second house also voice. So yeah, that's interesting. Saturn's ruling his seventh and eighth house, shared resources, right? So also relationships, which he has a difficult time with. So eighth house in the second, making money off of sex, that's also especially poor dignity, right? That is relevant and in play here. Let's see what else. Yeah, I can't think of anything else about that for Kanye West. I mean, the couple indications, you know, troubles with money. Of course, he's rich, but then he lost a shitload of money very, very quickly, right? And then the relationships, but yeah, and then the way he presents himself also, it's quite ridiculous a lot of times. Um, yeah, and he doesn't have a lot of authority, right? Like nobody takes him that seriously. But that's not like a strong Saturn. Unfortunately, I'm giving myself away. I don't have a very strong Saturn. It's in a strong house though. So, and my Mars is strong, so it kind of makes up for it. Jennifer Lawrence. All right. Now she's got a good Saturn and it's retrograde, right? But then she's also got Uranus, Neptune, and these are all in the second house. So, I mean, it's really interesting. Like when you compare, you really get to see how these planets work because, like, we talk about Kanye West versus Jennifer Lawrence. Who do you want to, who would you want choosing your outfits, or who would you want to be by your side, like going to like the most, prestigious event in the world? I mean, no contest. Jennifer Lawrence will present herself in a far more respectable way, right? She'll dress up and she'll command, you know, respect and dignity. That's just who she is, right? She's got Saturn in Capricorn in the second house. She plays serious roles. She plays, I mean, she's a well-paid actress. She's going to show up. She's going to present herself like a boss, like a captain. Of course, it's going to be unique and independent, very, very, it's retrograde, so it's going to be really up to her. It's not, she's not going to dress to impress. She's going to dress to express who she is, which is a boss, a real lady boss, a captain, right? And it's going to be unique. It's going to be creative, expressive, but a very dry Capricornian style, right? It's also the third house, so that's going to help. This is going to help out a lot with acting, and so she can play these dark, weird roles, like Katniss, whatever, in with the bow and arrow, that whole thing. Um, I'm sorry, I'm just not great with remembering those kind of things. Um, but yeah. Um, her finances should do a lot better than, like Kanye West. As far as like having that turmoil, right? If she's gonna keep her money. Um, second and third house combinations are great for acting or singing, right? So yeah, very solid. Second house, you're going to see again and again and again for actors. Very strong second house makes it, because that's the presence, right? And like, that this lady, she argued with me. She's like, "Oh, you're wrong. Where's this say in this chart?" Like, because I think I didn't finish that story. Yeah, because I said something. She's like, "Oh, it's just the ascendant," and I'm like, "No, it's the second house for style, for fashion, for all that." And she's like, "Where does it say that on this?" Like, she gave me the most. She posted like the most ridiculous, like, astrology 101 chart that was completely inaccurate anyway. She's like, "Where does it say that on this chart?" I'm like, "I'm a real astrologer, and I learned from real astrology, and like, I don't. That's what you're pointing to is not. That's nothing. That's not even accurate." And like plenty of astrologers would disagree with a lot of these significations. It's just like, I'm blocking you. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, oh my God. But anyway, second house for how a person shows up is everything. Um, okay, let's keep going. Go to Prince. All right, Saturn and Sag retrograde. Okay, I always think of Prince with his outfit. I just think of like the ass chaps. That's all I think about. Where the ass is cut out. It's like the most ridiculous thing like ever, right? So that's Saturn in Sagittarius. Sag is so wild, right? Wild and free and expressive. And so he's got the sextile to Chiron, the sesqui square to Venus. Venus is in Taurus. So what's really interesting is that um, I don't know if this is astrologically correct, but I would give the ass to Taurus. Like that's the body part Taurus. I mean, of course, the voice, the appearance, the throat, the mouth, all that. But I'm also going to give the ass to Taurus just because I think Taurus deserves the ass, and it represented itself here with Prince and how he dresses and how he shows up. Um, So the retrograde is very evident with Prince in that his fashion, his style, his I mean, this is also his voice. I mean, if we're being honest, I mean, we could also look to Jupiter, but Jupiter's retrograde. Um, and it's a day chart, so this is not the worst planet. Um, what was I saying? Keep texting me. Losing my train of thought. Hold on. Yeah, Saturn is sextile Jupiter, so that's actually dignifying it, right? So that's the other thing you want to look for. Saturn, Jupiter is the benefic of sect, meaning it's the most uh, um, best planet. It's the most positive planet, the planet that will produce the best results, and its sextile is Saturn, um, and it's dignifying it because it's in its domicile. Um, and so then we got the Chiron. Jupiter is going to be very expansive and expressive, so it's going to help out this conservative Saturn a lot. But his style, definitely representing that retrograde, right? Who wears ass chaps? I mean, I think, he's the only famous person ever who wore ass chaps and pretty much got away with it. Like nobody's like, oh, Prince shouldn't have worn those. Well, maybe some people were. I don't know. Yeah. So very interesting. I'm not sure how this affected his finances. I think he was pretty well off. I never heard him, about him losing money or whatever. And it's the third and fourth Lord. So definitely with the third Lord, music. And we see the dignity here, like because he played so many instruments, right? So that would be the third Lord signification, right? He played everything, guitar, piano, he did everything. Like he was just a one-man band, right? Amazing, amazing musician. But that's partially because so the Jupiter, Saturn, second, third, fourth, and then fourth would be that the early, from his family, from his youth, from his childhood, learning how to, um, you know, um, taking up music from an early age. The Chiron's just going to make it very unique, and one of a kind, authentic. Not necessarily wounded healer. Um, let's keep going. But I think this is pretty obvious with Prince, with how he showed up and represented himself. Very much like a boss, like a Saturnian captain, but also the retrograde, the Sag influence, the uniqueness, and also the Jupiter and Chiron, really, and Venus, the aspect, the Venus aspect. Now let's go to the governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger. All right. Saturn and Pluto in the second house, also with Sun and Leo. Um, and so one of the things about the second house is that yes, it can include these guns, right? I don't quite have Arnold Schwarzenegger guns yet, but I probably never will. Not probably. But we see the Saturn and Pluto, so it's very, that he's gonna show up in the world very, very heavy duty, intense, right? It's got the Leo sun to lift it up, to make it, positive and bright and egotistical and showy, for the camera. There's nobody who, by the way, I think I can't remember where I heard this. It was like some kind of study, but like um the people who go to the gym most have like strong Leo placements, like Mars and Leo, or just Leo in general, because they're the ones who really want to look strong, right? It's all for show, but that's their motivation, right? To have the look, to have the appearance, to have the show of strength, right? That's very Leo quality. And with Sun and then especially Saturn and Pluto, he's going to take it very, very seriously. So the muscles are a second house influence, right? Because that's how you show up. That's how you present yourself. It is part of the outfit. right? It is because it's not something that you have just automatically, which would be a first house thing. And it's not saying that the first house and second house can't influence each other. There can be that, but there's really the second house is like everything after that you put on after you're just like there as you are, right? Which includes the muscles, right? That's all part of his appearance. And then because Pluto is taking that Saturn and driving it so deep, such a heavy duty combination. Saturn is making Pluto very hard and cold. Pluto's taking Saturn going deep. So this is like very, very serious combination towards like how he shows up, how he presents himself. And so he can play roles like the Terminator and all the, like what else did he play? I don't know. All the other like I'm drawing a blank, like Conan the Barbarian, whatever. Anyway, you'd probably know better than I do. Played a lot of different roles, but yeah. Yeah, that's all about the second house. And so Saturn ruling the seventh and eighth. Eighth house in particular here, for that very kind of like really, really intense quality of uh you know being kind of like this badass muscle guy for the movies, for show, Leo, right? Leo sun. He can play all those roles like very, very well. That's gonna work well for him. Saturn is in Leo, so I don't know what financial troubles he's faced, but there's probably some, like especially with seven. Did he lose a lot of money with his relationships? Maybe. I don't know. Probably. Right. Um, Probably went through some financial difficulties here and there. Um, Sort of like Kanye West. Um, yeah. I mean, Saturn is in Leo, but Sun's in Leo too, right? So Sun is definitely going to help this out a lot. So it's not so bad. Not nearly as bad as it could be. Although it is a night chart and Saturn is the worst planet, but so it's a toss up, but he probably did face some hardship and whatever. Did well the rest of the time. I think that's pretty clear about the second house, how that shows up. It's going to manifest differently for everyone, but you really do everyone. All right, Steve Jobs for the third house. Alrighty. It keeps doing this. It keeps like I changed it for a synastry reading and then it keeps reverting back and I keep changing it back and it keeps reverting back. It's like fuck off. Like just stay with the last setting I set it on. Just stay with that. It's this software. It might be my computer is wonky, still all crazy shit. All right, Steve Jobs. One thing, I mean, it's really look at look at the degrees. 21, 21, 21, right? 20, 24. So there's a lot going on here. These planets are all working together, and that's a really good thing. When you have planets working together, you can create something. 22. So yeah. Saturn in the third in Scorpio. That's his intellect. That's a sharp mind. That's a scientific, sharp mind. And it's working for his career in Gemini, the Venus, the beauty, the design in Capricorn, something very practical. The Jupiter, Uranus, inventive, 11th house, kind of the sort of uh, Aquarian abstraction archetype. Uh, Cancer is something physical, building. The Ascendant coming in there, playing in a role. So yeah, there's a lot going on here that you could put together to see how he was able to create or be a major component of Apple Macintosh computers, right? Um, Saturn is ruling the fifth and the sixth. So the sixth house for regular daily work routine, work habits, dispositing his Mercury, which is stationary. Fifth house would be more about like the entertaining the entertainment side of things, but also the um, creative qualities of the aesthetic creative aspect of Mac, which it does have, right? These are beautiful products. That's one thing that people love, that I love, right? Is the design, that the creative quality, that it's not overly complicated, it's simple, it's just really, really nice. It works really well. His designs. And that's the Venus in Capricorn, Saturn dignifying this Venus tremendously, because the aspect is super tight by 1 arc minute. So I mean, Saturn's like blessing this Venus, which is in its own bounds. So that is super nice. And then both aspecting the MC really well. Yeah, this is like a really sharp intellect right here. Square the part of fortune, so there's some sort of fortune going along with this Saturn. So yeah, really, really good. Really strong intellect in the third house, especially if it's got good aspects. It is a night chart, so we could say mental health issues that come along with this. There was some conflict, of course, and he did get kicked out, or forced out, squeezed out of a Macintosh, and that could be seen from um sixth house, I think, sixth lord, in the third, because sixth house deals with serving others. You have a boss in the sixth house, and I think when he was forced out of Apple, um he brought in other people that were, in a way, in a sense, um could had the power to force him out. I don't know the details. I'm not, but just superficially from what I read, that seems what it was. So I think that relates. Anyway, sixth house is conflict. Um and the dignity here is neutral, Saturn in Scorpio. Does get a nice trine from Jupiter, which not as far as the sign, but Jupiter in general is going to be great, and so is Venus. Venus actually in a night chart is going to really help. Not so much in Scorpio, but just in general. But anyway, so yeah, he did have that trouble with work and friends, social. Third house is still social. So yeah, I think that's how that came up. That's how that showed up. One of the ways. Um, Also could be related to his illness, sixth house, sixth lord. But well, I don't know if the sun is, but anyway, I think that's going a little far. Let's keep going. We got Elvis. Elvis next. So yeah, Saturn in Capricorn direct. Sorry, Saturn in Aquarius direct in the third house. Right, so second lord in the third. For a singer, that's great. Right. For somebody with having tons of presence, could be in movies, on stage, and he just has that. He just oozing presence, especially Capricorn and Aquarius. So Capricorn is boss energy. He's got the pompadour. Capricorns always love the pompadour for whatever reason. The pompadour is a very Capricornian style. Um, and yeah, very commanding presence. But second lord in the third house means skills of the voice, because especially, not always, because there's many ways this can present itself, but second house is voice, third house is expression or skills, right? So especially if it's in good dignity. So yeah, a lot going on here that works really well. So Saturn is in conjunct Pluto. That's not great. That's really not great for his mental health, even though Saturn is strong here. and Saturn's in the dominant position. Pluto's in the sixth. It's in the eighth from the ascendant, but it's in the sixth from Saturn. So Saturn being authority, um, he served in the military. Saturn's also aspecting the MC, so this is big for his career, right? Gives him a lot of respect and authority, right? But this strong Saturn overcoming Pluto shows that he's not going to fight. Saturn's in the stronger position. Government, the authority, they say, go to work, go fight in war. He's going to do it, right? Or the doctors tell him, go take your prescription meds. He's going to do it. He was against drugs and alcohol, but he was fine with the doctors giving him all drugs and not alcohol, drugs, prescription meds. Saturn's bound. This very strong Saturn, but it's overcoming his own Pluto psychology, right? His own inner strength, right? Saturn was much stronger. He was like, okay, boss, whoever the boss is, I'm gonna follow you, right? Government, doctor, whatever. Anyway, that's Elvis. I think that's it. Let's go to Catherine, Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, aka. All right, Saturn, Pluto, Libra, Mars, third house. All right. So this one's interesting because Mars obviously is in detriment here. Saturn is exalted, but it's conjunct Pluto, which is very heavy duty. Very heavy duty. Saturn ruling the sixth and seventh. Right. So it's really interesting because so from the seventh, we could say, okay, yeah, you can have a great marriage, right? But it's also ruling the sixth, and well, she has Cancer, right? Now you can't ignore the sixth house planets. See, it keeps reverting. I hate this. I want to see the fucking vertex. Just doing it for synastry. All right. I gotta change. I don't know how to change the default. I don't know. I'm still learning this. But Saturn also square the nose. So there's a lot going on here. I mean, this points to her intellect, her mind, her mental health, which could be good, but probably maybe extremely obsessive, psychological, right? Like deeply intense, paranoid, passive aggressive with Mars here, but very balanced, fair. So it's like good. It's mixed, right? Right. She married a prince, an actual prince, right? Saturn's exalted, but it's conjunct Pluto, so it's not easy. And she gets Cancer and square the nose, and square the sun and moon, basically. So it's difficult. I don't envy her. And if it's like, I don't know, like I wouldn't want to be, well, first of all, I'm not a woman, but I don't want to be a woman, but I wouldn't want to be in her shoes either. It really doesn't seem easy. It's good in many ways, but it's also really difficult. I don't know how this shows up in her life, but she's probably pretty intense as in her mind. Her mind is really obsessive. I mean, you know, Libra is going to be more balanced and peaceful than it would be. Like it is a better sign to have Saturn Pluto conjunction and than probably most other signs, right? Because Libra is so intellectual but balanced and fair, so and peaceful, and but Pluto and Saturn is so intense, right? Um, this would probably make a really good judge. They'd probably take their work extremely seriously, right? A lawyer, right? I've seen it for lawyers, in fact. The Mars and Libra, that's not really, I don't think that's gonna add to this combination, probably detracts because Mars and Saturn tensions. Um, in some ways it's good for Mars because It's Saturn's the planet of its exaltation, but it's draining Saturn because Saturn has to work extra hard to keep Mars in line. Um, and then it's also dealing with this Pluto, which is so obsessive and intense, and deep, psychological. So it's probably a real chore for her to keep her mind balanced and healthy the way she needs to with the Libra here. Because the Pluto is just making up so intense and obsessive, and Mars wants to misbehave in Libra, be all passive aggressive and petty. But definitely influencing her. I mean, it's relationships and sixth house, so her daily routine, the third house, intellect. But yeah, night charts, so Saturn, although it's exalted, is still going to cause problems. As much as I can gather from that for now. Let's go to Jim Carrey. Now, this is actually the fourth whole sign house, but because it's very much in the third quadrant, I thought I'd include it in the third. Because people have charts like this, so might as well represent them, right? Where the houses are mixed. Obviously, so Capricorn, strong Capricorn, but Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, South Node in Aquarius, and this is where the funny is, the comedy. Obviously, Neptune's going to help with comedy, with movies in general. Neptune is just good for creativity, right? Especially on the ascendant. But Uranus conjunct the MC, that by 2 degrees, that's really strong for comedy as well, especially in Leo. Um, Saturn ruling the third cusp, third whole sign house, in the fourth whole sign house, in the third quadrant. So this is his mind, this is his intellect, this is his expression. Jupiter, Mercury combinations are great for really expanding the expression. In Aquarius, it's hilarious, right? Aquarius is hilarious. So is Uranus. Uranus is shocking, but also great for comedy and humor. Gemini also, right? So this guy's loaded. This guy's funny as hell. Loaded with comic significators. Jupiter, Mercury, Aquarius, stellium, Uranus conjunct the MC, and Leo. Leo fire signs are great for comedy as well. Secondary to air signs. Gemini influence, Gemini moon, part of fortune. Vertex. I hate seeing that. Never changing the chart again. Fuck the fucking vertex. All right. I changed it once and it's just like every single chart is showing up now. Anyway, yeah, this is a good Saturn. It's in a night chart, so it will cause some problems, probably some mental health issues. I mean, it's strong, right? I don't think it's square the moon. Yeah, so there could be some mental health issues, maybe some depression, anxiety, existential stuff, which he had, like, and he definitely turned towards spirituality, which we could see with the Neptune and Scorpio and on the ascendant, right? Just square his Jupiter, Mercury. So there's probably issues, but it's not that bad. Right. Not many bad aspects, but the Saturn is aspecting the moon lately. So yeah, there's could be minor mental health challenges, I would say. Otherwise, it's excellent. All right. Well, that's the third house. So let's keep going. Um, I hope this is landing for a lot of you. Hope it's making sense. Now we got Mad Donna, Angry Donna. Here we go with the fucking vertex again. All right. Saturn, sextile, Chiron. What's really interesting is that most of our planets are piled up right here in the 12th, first, and second house, right? 12th, creativity. Oh, we can say 11th, but that's really 12th. 12th is the subconscious creativity. They always call it the house of self-undoing, which I hate. Here I'm a little tangent, going a little tangent, because it's not the fucking house of self-undoing. It's the house of subconscious. And in the subconscious, yeah, you can sabotage yourself, but you can, if you're going to undo yourself, you can also do yourself, right? It could be the house of doing rather than the house of undoing. It could be both, but they don't talk about that. They're just like the house of undoing. That's like, um, that's like calling money, the, this is a bad analogy. I'm not going to say that. The house of the self-undoing is the product. It's the symptom of what the house is. It's the house of the subconscious. So of course you can sabotage your self-sabotage in the house of self-undoing, right? In the house of the subconscious, of course you can, right? Mess things up because you're unconscious. You're whatever's going on in your subconscious is going to do shit that you're not fully aware of. Therefore, you can undo yourself, right? But you can also do yourself, right? So they don't say that. I just hate the way that a lot of astrologers think that the houses are just like a grab bag of like random traits, random qualities. It's this quality. It's that quality that has nothing to do with that quality. But they're in the same house together. Like, fuck off. Like, you're not understanding what these houses are. Anyway, it's the house of the subconscious where you can undo or do yourself, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna undo myself because I planets in the 12th house. No, fuck off. No, you're not. I mean, you probably will if you think that. But like Madonna, you can also do yourself from the 12th house. A lot of creativity will come from the 12th house because you're accessing your own subconscious mind, which is like the ocean of creativity. Um, and then first house, and then second house, obviously, and then Saturn all the way here alone in the 4th house. Um, yeah, she had a difficult upbringing, difficult go of things, especially in the beginning, retrograde. But you know, I did not pull up her Wikipedia, which I probably could or should, to reference her childhood. But there was some difficult stuff with her parents, with her family, with her father, I believe. It's retrograde. I think she had to leave home. Um, sextile Chiron, which is a pretty good aspect. I mean, but Chiron is also opposite the sun. So there's probably, some issues there. But Chiron makes her more unique, more one of a kind, angry Donna. Um, Saturn is trine spirit. I don't know if that how that works, but definitely trine the sun. Um, that's gonna help her out. Let's see. Saturn is ruling the 5th and 6th house in the 4th house. So definitely like it's pointing a lot to sort of an early start of things, but also difficult early start of things. Um, 5th house entertainment, 6th house conflict, daily grind, work, um, competitiveness. Um, yeah. Saturn in the 4th would also indicate how she is at home or how she likes her home. So she's probably if you go to Madonna's house, she's probably pretty bossy, pretty strict, has a rigid structure and schedule and things like that. But Sagittarius would make it quite wild, unique, expressive, fiery, passionate, things of that nature. But definitely troubles and difficulties early on from family and youth. All right. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe had it even worse. All right. No, it's Marilyn Manson. Sorry. Like, where is it? Okay. Marilyn Monroe, she was like an orphan. She had it extremely difficult. She was abused. Scorpio, it's retrograde. She had it really rough. It's in conjunct fortune, so there was a lot like you could see like okay, bad aspect to fortune showing bad fortune, right? Square Neptune, loss, drugs, alcohol, really difficult. Square her moon, a lot of troubles, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of just really rough upbringing. Um, Trying Mars, which is good. So, I mean, Mars rules Scorpio. So, Mars is helping, dignifying this Saturn as much as it can. It's a day chart, so it's not even the worst planet, but it's just the bad aspects, it being in Scorpio and retrograde in the fourth house. Just showing really heck of a time as far as um, getting along, growing up, early childhood, um, yeah, being abused and being orphaned, and uh, very difficult roots, very strict, cold, hard, neglectful, retrograde, unfortunate upbringing, which unfortunately, you never really shake. Even though she became like a big successful model and movie star and even made her own films, was a boss lady. Um, yeah, she never really could shake her difficult past, and it caught up with her. Right. So very sad, but yeah, that is what it is. All right. Now we're going for a different kind of person, different kind of Saturn. Nostradamus. Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Chiron, fourth, all retrograde, right? In Cancer. Sponsored by the moon. Moon, trine, Jupiter. Sorry, Saturn. So we got so it's a daytime chart. Jupiter is the benefic of sect. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So it's dignifying this whole house, the fourth house, because otherwise, Saturn and Mars are in very poor dignity here, right? Plus, Saturn receives a perfect trine from Moon in Scorpio, where Moon is in domicile here. So Moon's blessing it, Saturn's blessing it. I'm sorry, Moon's blessing it, Jupiter's blessing it, this fourth house. And so it's water, right? Uranus in Pisces, Moon in Scorpio, eighth house, 12th house, fourth house. So he's deeply mystical, deeply psychic, deeply able to penetrate into the the um the spirit world, right? And provide these quatrains, these little written psychic predictions. Saturn's ruling the MC, dispositing Sun, Mercury, Neptune, and the 11th house, Venus, Fortune, right? So it's his career, his public image, his calling. It's what he does. He's at home being a mystic, being a psychic. Chiron here is going to help too, right? Chiron was a mystic, not Chiron was like a shaman, basically. And if Chiron's not bad aspect, if it's not poorly aspected, it will not mean wounded healer. Um, it will mean something more like shaman or something else. It could be like really unique, one of a kind. Uh, so anyway, the retrograde shows that these are catching on to the pure spiritual influences of these planets because again, you have the sun on one side, you have the earth in the middle, and then you have planets over here on the other side, farthest away from the sun. That's retrograde. So they're facing space. They're getting outer space. They're not getting the influences of the sun, which means The sun is burning up the subtle qualities of the planets. So you're getting when planets are direct, they're not subtle. They are going with the flow, but they're dense. They're obtuse. They're just like, let's go with the flow. Let's do what everyone else is doing. We're fucking stupid. Like they're not they're servants to the sun. The sun is king. They're going along with the king. They're just like, let's go along. I mean, it's fine, like direct planets are easy. They work well, right? Because they just go with the flow. They're just like, let's do what everyone else is doing. We don't have to think. We're just gonna go with the flow. Retrograde planets are not going with the flow. They're taking in the direct, they're carrying the direct influence of what they signify to the person, right? So it's pure spiritual energy from when we have retrograde planets. So that's the signification here, that these planets are delivering their full strength, right? The pure stuff, right? None of the watered down, cut with all, baby powder, right? It's the pure Coke. I don't do Coke. If I'm gonna make an analogy, it's gonna be like the pure. Okay, we'll go with like Scotch, right? It's the 20-year-old Scotch. I don't know, whatever. The good stuff, the pure stuff. Um, I think you get it. Anyway, not being influenced by the sun. Water sign, water house, trining, water. Yeah, so much water, so much depth. Now there was issues with the Saturn. It's still in poor dignity, conjunct Mars, and there was a lot of problems with the church, with the government, with like the leadership, the authorities of that time, right? They were like, if they caught him, that's why he had to do it in secret. He was hiding from them because he would have been in trouble. They had all the authority. That's a Saturn thing, right? So he would have been in trouble in his home if they thought he was doing like witchy stuff, which he was doing. They would have tried to burn him at the stake or whatever. I don't know. Throw him in a dungeon. Not good stuff. Also, look at this trine between Pluto and the ascendant. Sheesh. I mean, it's perfect. And the same with the sun conjunct MC. Really, really, really nice thing. So anyway, yeah. Nostradamus, not a fluke. All right. Let's go to Mr. Godfather himself, Francis Ford Coppola. Mercury, Sun, Saturn. Sun's exalted. Sun is going to add dignity to this fourth whole sign house of Aries. Even though the IC is in Taurus. What's the signification of the fourth house for somebody like Francis Ford Coppola, movie director? You see this a lot. Actually, it's very common. Strong fourth house with movie writers, directors, producers, movie makers, because they have to build a world. And if you can't build a world, you can't make a movie, right? That's what the fourth house is. It's about building physical things, right? You're going to build a house, you're going to buy some land, you're going to develop real estate, you're going to make sculptures, you're going to be an architect, you're going to do something physical in the fourth house, maybe create a family, right? It's about building. So like when you're making movies, you have to create a world, and you have to have a vision for that world. You have to understand what world you're creating. And if you don't have a good fourth house, or fourth lord, fourth house, you're not going to have a vision for what a world, an actual like something that is believable. You're not going to be able to make that, right? So he made his own world. He made, especially like, I don't remember all of the movies he made, but like The Godfather, he created a world there, right? And then it's like Sun and Saturn, and it's Aries, right? War, aggression, violence. Saturn and Aries has kind of like a dictatorship quality, dictator, because Aries is very selfish, and Saturn is very bossy, like the Godfather, right? Sun and Saturn. Right. Then, okay, Mercury's retro Mercury too. Like but the sun Saturn in Aries is really sun strong, Saturn's weak. Ego, forceful dictatorship, right? Like Godfather's not really, when he asks you a favor, there's not really, it's like you don't really have a choice. You're gonna do it or probably die, right? So it's stuff like that. See, Saturn's ruling the first house with this, Mars and Capricorn here, very dignified ascendant. So that first and second, right? So him and then his assets, resources. Um, yeah. His voice, his aesthetics, his design, his style, going into all in the second house. Um, about his childhood, I have no idea. No idea about his childhood, but there was probably a lot of difficulty there as well with this Saturn and Aries. Um, Oh, there's also mutual reception here. Mars and Saturn signs, Saturn and Mars sign. So first, fourth is really, so he's going to have like a great feel for homeland, right? So like he was able to capture what the spirit, the essence of the this mafia world which he created, but it was probably based on something that he had some interaction with. I have no idea, right? But there must have been some interplay there where he's like, okay, I understand what this world is like, fourth house, because that fourth interaction, right? Very, very strong. He's able to capture worlds. So that's really strong there. I'm gonna pause it for 1 second. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right. Uh, One more thing I wanted to say about this is that planets in poor dignity, they can't express themselves well creatively. I know I said that a bunch of times, but for those who haven't heard that before, and the reason for that is because that if all the planets are in really good dignity, then you have something like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or Little House on the Prairie. It's nice, it's fine, but it's like it's not really dynamic or interesting for something that is where you want to, if you want to see the darker side of life, the grittiness, the in a format where you're not like directly involved, like I don't want to be in the mafia or be involved in the mafia, but it's fun seeing mafia movies, right? So that's the kind of thing, like where you're expressing that poor dignity in a very creative way. There you can express the fullness of it because he's not going to go out and kill people himself, but he can make movies where people are killing each other, right? That sort of thing, and being, total like fascist dictators or whatever, right? Interestingly enough, there's the aspect to Neptune as well. Neptune and Virgo for the creativity. Opposite Jupiter and Pisces. So anyway, yeah. Let's keep going. All righty. Um, sorry. That's the fourth house. Yeah. All right, let's go to the fifth house. And we're gonna go with Mr. Mojo Rising. Mojo Rising. Gemini, Saturn, retrograde, Jim Morrison. Um, so Gemini, he was a poet. Fifth house, entertainment, creativity, performance. Right? He was a boss, a leader in that area. Also, Mars, Uranus in Gemini. So definitely brilliant in a Martian kind of way, but also explosive and wild, and expressive, all retrograde. So getting that pure stuff, the pure spiritual rays of these planets. Saturn ruling the 12th lord, the 12th and the first. So it's his ascendant lord. It's retrograde, right? So there's definitely like somebody who's going to be a trailblazer in Gemini and themes, creative, fifth house, performance, expression, poetry. It's a day chart. Saturn, what aspects? So it actually has a semi-square to North Node and Pluto. So this is going to be a bit more of a destructive Saturn, right? Ascendant Lord, it is him. Um, and yeah, that fits the bill, right? Also, this moon is square, the Pluto. So uh, the nodes, Pluto, and the moon, all at that same degree, or right around yeah, well, within 1 degree. And then Saturn in the middle, right? Saturn in that midpoint between moon, Pluto, moon, no, node, right? So that we could see, like, there's gonna be issues there of just wanting to have too much fun, right? I mean, well, Saturn would restrict the fun. So like, even though he was probably trying to have fun, he wasn't having that much fun in Saturn. But Mars and Uranus would surely like to have some fun, but definitely challenging there. We know he got fat towards the end, so there were some issues with his body. Um, and what else? A certain amount of heaviness comes along with Saturn. Um, his music was quite, I would say, Saturnian, had that vibe, almost like depressing, sad. I wouldn't say his music was very happy. It was poetic, um, talented, certainly unique, quite rebellious. I mean, if you want to compare bands, Doors versus the Stones were radio friendly. Doors were, opening that door into the other world, doors of perception. Aldous Huxley. Um, Too much drugs, if you ask me, but definitely capturing that retrograde vibe. 12th house, loss, subconscious creativity, yeah, but also the loss, the just expanse of the subconscious mind moving into you know, into that door, into the other world, through that door, the door of perception. Um, but yeah, wild, uh, rebellious. He was very rebellious, hypersexual. Um, he got himself into a lot of trouble with his antics. Mars, Uranus, Gemini, retrograde, in the same as the Saturn. He certainly wasn't conservative, but the retrograde will ensure that. Um, and then just opposite the sun, basically, like we're directly opposite in the house. So very much opposed to society, or the trends of society, if you will. And yeah, with the harsh aspect to the node and Pluto and the moon. Definitely mental health issues. Even though his mind is strong, it's exalted in Taurus. There's only so much a moon can take. You get bad aspects from Saturn and Pluto and the nodes in the third house. It's gonna make a man a little bit crazy, for sure. But you know, creative genius at the same time. Jupiter aspecting the MC, ensuring a good career, strong career from the seventh house. Even though it's a square, it's still good. Strong contact. Let's keep going. Already. Let's go to Mel Gibson. Mars, Saturn, Scorpio, fifth house. Um, yeah, then Saturn square Pluto and Jupiter, pretty much. Um, seventh and eighth house, dispositing the sun, uh, Mercury, Chiron, Ceres, Venus, conjunct Mars. Now, this is an intense combination. Mars and Saturn can be very violent, but it's in the fifth house, so it's going to translate to movies, right? Entertainment, performance. And this is why he makes the movies and he plays the roles that he does. They're really intense. Um, they are Mars is in good dignity here in the fifth house, but still Mars conjunct Saturn and Scorpio is going to be super intense. It's applying. It's conflictual. So it's violence, right? So like we know that. So like in his movies, there tends to be violence. It's Saturn's sextile Mercury, which is really nice. There can be a lot of expression, like good expression of this in Saturn's sign. Um, so he can express that violence, that conflict really well. Uh, the square to Pluto and Jupiter just makes it a lot more intense. Um, Jupiter's in Virgo, so it's not great dignity, but Mars is. Uh, and Jupiter has no affinity for Scorpio either. And neither does Mars or Saturn have any affinity for Virgo. Mars does okay in Virgo. I think Saturn does okay in Virgo too, but just in general. Uh, so obviously seventh house, where his sun is. So I mean, that has a lot to do with performance because the sun is here. So, his love for acting, seventh house is not only personal relationships, it's lots of people, masses, right? Um, so that's it's not good for relationships. It's difficult for relationships. You bring a lot of ego into relationships, but at the same time, with sun in the seventh, you become defined by relationships, your personality. Um, And if we're talking about the eighth house, where we have, Venus particularly, but also Ceres and Chiron, then we're talking about, more gritty themes, more eighth house themes. Aquarius, themes of freedom, right? Rebellion, society, civilization, social issues, that all comes into the mix. Mercury is opposite Uranus. So like a lot of these things are coming together, which is why he's not just an actor. He's got the second house, Pluto, Jupiter, um, even Uranus, essentially. He can make movies too because he has like a lot of planets that are intermingling, mixing, and creating drama. And this drama he's going to play out in his writing, in his movies, and his acting, right? A lot of conflict, tension, drama, this way, that way, bad guys, good guys, mixing it up, freedom, right? Freedom. Eighth house themes of shared resources. I mean, more elaborately, people dominating over each other, power plays, right? Bosses and leaders and tyrants and that sort of thing. Cops and robbers, bad guys, good guys, fighting, all the things that you'd see in Mel Gibson movies. They're all well represented here. Moon trine Mercury, so expressing the heart really well, both in his acting and writing, producing, and as well as Uranus. It's very exciting, very dramatic here. A lot going on. And then Mars, it's got this well dignified Scorpio Mars, within 1 degree of the MC. Uh, so yeah. And then Jupiter and Neptune, Uranus, all touching each other. Mercury touching each other. Sounds kind of gross. It sounds kind of sexual. All right. So that's Mel Gibson. Um, yeah, with seventh house, we know that his relationships do suffer, right? And there's like shouting matches, like and stuff like that. Uh, oh, Neptune square Mercury. And that I guess that would be like the whole like oh square Uranus too. Like the whole crazy accusations, like he's crazy and whatnot, which he might be. I mean, you know. I'm neutral on Mel Gibson. I kind of like him, but he's also kind of anti-Semitic, so whatever. I mean, he is what he is. He makes good movies. All righty. Let's go to Newton. Isaac Newton. All right. Saturn, Jupiter, and Pisces. Saturn, Jupiter, Pisces. So Jupiter's really strong. It's in its own bounds. Jupiter's really, really, really strong here. Fifth house. Um, it's actually six whole sign house, but calling it fifth for this purpose. Then we get the trine to Uranus here, to Jupiter. So Jupiter Saturn combinations. We get the scientific side from Saturn, and then the philosophical side from Jupiter, and they're marrying. So we're getting like really nice ideas that are scientific in nature, but philosophical, expansive, exploratory, especially with the trine to Uranus here, making it like really outside the bounds of Saturn, but including Saturn, right? So exploratory, new ideas. And then we get the sextile to Sun, which is also really nice. It just means it's playing in there, playing together. It's Capricorn Sun, so he's bringing his leadership personality into it, confidence, leadership, ability. I mean, Capricorn is not necessarily confident from the get-go, but they gain confidence through their efforts and hard work. But there's this nice trine and two sextiles there. Not perfect, but still quite good. Saturn ruling third house of intellect, espousing the sun, fourth house of home, the earth, the land. Espousing is Venus. So something about the natural law, especially with Aquarius here, right? The law of the earth, right? Newtonian physics, bring in like something very kind of earthy, natural, organic, like apples falling on his head or whatever. Tying it into the earth. Nikola Tesla also had strong fourth house, and that's why he was always like looking at the earth and the underground and the currents of the underground thing. The underground thing, that's what it is. The underground, the earth. So yeah, fifth house, education, basically, right? Pisces gonna be more philosophical. With Saturn and Pisces, you're not really getting a strong spiritual current. You're getting a strong material current that has that's very expansive and imaginative, right? We're getting an aspect to the MC, sesqui-square, a light one, but it's still there. Square to Mercury, so tying in the science. It's in Sag, but Mercury and poor dignity can be, you see this sometimes with scientists or researchers or like people who invent stuff, like Mercury and poor dignity, either in Sag or Pisces, can be very exploratory, very like inventive, because it's like going outside the box, right? If other factors are good or strong, that can be how that expresses itself. Plus, it's in Mercury's bounds, or in between Mercury and Saturn. So either one is going to work really well. Mercury is a little better, but Saturn will still work, especially for science. Regardless, it's making contact. Not in a great way because Pisces, but for thinking big picture, that's going to be really good. It's a night chart, so Saturn should be the more difficult planet. I don't think Isaac Newton ever married or had children. And so that's one indicator here, fifth house Saturn, right? Not in great dignity, but Jupiter's here. He was just all work, right? It's objectively six whole sign house. He was all about work with Saturn here. But for him, it's fifth house, so it's fun. It's entertainment. Work is entertainment, right? When fifth and sixth house combine. Um, yeah. So yeah, this is an important major factor in who he was. He's Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Mercury combinations, Sun, MC. Anyway, Isaac Newton, third house, fourth house. All right. Now we're going to Churchill, Winston Churchill. Take me to Churchill. Changes it quite a bit when you don't have this ridiculous points on here. Yeah. Saturn in Aquarius, fifth house. His houses are so like perfectly, well, almost perfectly anoretic. Let's put it that way. Extremely anoretic. 29, 29. Yeah, and all the house cusps are going to be at that 29th degree. So I kind of take it to be the sign after, right? You know, would I use Mercury as the ascendant lord? Yeah, I would look at it, but I would also look at Venus. So, but anyway, Saturn is ruling the so objectively, I'm calling it the fifth and the fourth. Even though the IC technically, see, here's the thing. They have the time as 1:30 a.m. How do we know it's not like 1:30 a.m. and 30 seconds, which would, I don't know, 30 seconds would move it, but 1:31, right? Where it moves into Libra rising. I don't know. Anyway, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm calling it the fifth house and the fourth house. But fourth house significations work perfectly because for politicians, they need to think about the earth, the land, the homeland of their country that they are representing, which he was the prime minister during World War II, helped defeat Adolf Hitler. So Saturn in Aquarius is in good dignity. It's not retrograde, it's direct, which you want for a politician. Right? You don't want a politician breaking all the rules and all the laws and just be like, no, we're not doing the normal thing. We're going to do the thing that nobody else wants to do, that nobody else is doing. No, that's good for artists. It's good for rebels. It's good for writers. It's not good for people who are actually representing things that the sun represents, which is government, right? The sun represents government, right? So you don't want to be like really retrograde. I mean, having some planets retrograde is fine, right? But you want more planets to be direct when you're representing the thing that the sun represents, which is government, right? So yeah, Saturn in domicile in Aquarius. Aquarius represents the idealization of civilization, right? How are you going to organize society? What are you going to do about it? And so yeah, it's in the fifth house. Fifth house is great for, yeah, I mean, performance for one thing, like, you know, going to be trying the, here's a little different, but you know, the first house essentially, right? Air. So it's in a good house for everything, for education, entertainment, giving speeches, right? He can stand up on the podium. It'll work great because he's got that Saturn there, good dignity. People listen to him, people respect him, people will admire him. People are like, oh yeah, he knows what he's talking about. Even if he doesn't know what he's talking about, they're like, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Right. That's the kind of thing a strong Saturn will do. Other people will listen. Like if you want, like, you need a good leader to let me say that. In order to have a good leader, you need somebody who people will respect. Other leaders will respect. The people of his own country will respect him, right? So a strong Saturn is excellent for them. It's sextile the sun. Yeah, it's not making many aspects. So, but it is opposite Uranus, really widely mooned by the sign. But yeah, Uranus definitely. Uranus also is tightly conjunct that angular midpoint. So Uranus is another indicator of politics and social issues. right? Especially in the 11th house. Leo, leadership, frontman. Um, you see that? You see, so it's a square, the midpoint, Uranus. Um, so that's what these are. So it means it's essentially angular between the ascendant and the MC. So Uranus is very strong for his chart. So is Saturn in Aquarius, with as the fourth and fifth ruler. So yep, well, I mean that adds up. Certainly no mystery there. All right, let's go to the sixth house, and we're going with Mr. Bruce Lee. Saturn, Jupiter, sixth house, sixth whole sign house, sixth quadrant, right on the sixth cusp, essentially. Right. Um, and if you know me, I'm just like, if it's in the sixth whole sign house, close to the sixth cusp, I'm definitely calling it six or whatever house. Right. If it's in the whole sign house, I'm close to the cusp, it's definitely in that house for me. Right. Some people will be like, no, it's fifth house. No, it's not. Not for me. Anyway. Jupiter's the ascendant lord, sun on the ascendant. Saturn ruling the second and third. So Saturn's ruling his voice, but also his appearance, right? How he's presenting himself, how he's showing up in the world. Third house, his intellect, his mind, his expression, his hands, right? Third and the sixth is actually really good for fighting because you got these hands, and now they're going into the house of conflict and fighting, right? With his ascendant lord Jupiter. Jupiter, Saturn, also very mature, both very mature planets, retrograde. So what did he do? He invented his own martial art. That's a retrograde thing. You're going to invent your own martial art if all your planets are direct. You're just going to be like, whatever's popular, that's the one I'm going to do. And I'm not going to question it one little bit. That's the way direct planets go. I mean, of course, if you have all direct planets, some can go retrograde in the secondary progression. So you might have retrograde kind of inclinations depending on your age. But if it's retrograded in the natal chart, that's going to be with you for life, even if it goes direct at some point in secondary progressions. But Saturn has a exact in conjunct with the North Node. That means the older he gets, the more this Saturn is on the sixth house retrograde is going to affect him and his health. Right? He died. There's all these conspiracy theories about it, the way he died, but he died because of, so he had an injury, which Saturn can represent, especially conjunct the ascendant lord Jupiter. I mean, Jupiter is very, especially in Taurus, very rich. You could probably get away with a lot, right? It's abundant, so it has a lot of softness, but Saturn is hard and dry, and Saturn can create injuries because it's not fluid, it's not wet, it's not fatty, it's dry, it's hard, it's cold. So Saturn to the body will make injuries more likely. So he injured himself working out. I heard this from Chuck Norris, who was an associate of Bruce Lee's, who knew him well and was also a karate champion. He hurt himself working out, and then he took some prescription pills again, like Elvis did, and there was a complication with the different prescription pills. These doctors, they kill people all the time, right? People think they're safe with doctors. You're fucking not safe with doctors. You're really not safe. Doctors will kill you. Like, let me just tell you, doctors will fucking kill you. You're better off just doing your research, being an adult, stop putting your life and your health in the hands of somebody else who really does not pay any price if you die. Like, you can die by a doctor's hands. They're just like, fuck it, it happens. You're a number, you're a statistic. Be an adult, take your health in your own hands. Stop trusting doctors, right? They'll just kill you and go on with their fucking day. It doesn't fucking matter to them, right? Even if they're like, they're still gonna go on with their life killing other people, right? So don't fucking trust doctors. Anyway, yeah. So it was drugs that killed him. Sixth house, Saturn, right? Day chart, night chart. I mean, kind of in between Saturn. But one of the things that I look at when I'm looking at day, night, kind of like trying to figure out sect, I do look at the day and night, obviously, but I also look at the year because the theory behind Saturn, Mars, and here's a little tangent, as far as being malefic, is that Saturn's hot. So in the day, it's going to be more hot, and therefore it's going to be, like, like temperatures are out of control. Mars is going to be more out of control. It's more imbalanced, right? Night, Saturn's cold. It's colder at night, darker at night. Saturn's a cold planet. There's going to be too much coldness, hardness, separation, right, from Saturn. So one of the other things I look at is, well, how hot or cold was it actually, right? Not just day or night. So it's 7 in the morning, but it's also November 27th. Still pretty cold. Like, so which is going to be more of a problem, Mars or Saturn? Probably Saturn, right? It's cold. So Saturn, there's more of a cold imbalance than a hot imbalance. I mean, if you just want a shortcut, if you want to know which is going to be more of a problem, look to that as well, not just day or night. He's right on the cusp. He's born at sunrise. But we can say Saturn's pretty fucking, bad planet right now because it's November 27th, 7 in the morning. It's not warm. Not fucking warm. Just because of the sunlight out, you might be there freezing your ass off. Even in San Francisco is not going to be that bad, but so there's probably but still, Saturn, it's not that great, and it's in conjunct the North Node, conjunct the Ascendant Lord. It's retrograde. It's in the 6th house, right? It's in the same house as Uranus, so there could be sudden accidents and whatnot. And then it's also opposite, Mars, Venus, Moon, Fortune, Mercury, Ceres, right? All these Scorpio planets. So, I mean, oppositions are very competitive, right? So that's why you like to fight people. Like when people have a lot of oppositions, they're gonna be fighters, not necessarily physical fighters, not always like actual fighting people in the physical, but in some way, shape, or form, or like have some sort of opposition, counseling or working with others one-on-one. But that's the kind of thing where you get with oppositions. But these oppositions, that's tough, that's intense, that's fighting people, right? Jupiter, Saturn on one side, and the Scorpio stellium on the other with Mars. Yeah. So really intense. Mars squared Pluto. So yeah. Third house, the intellect, for sure. Like when he comes to like his, he developed his own martial arts. It's retrograde plus, third lord. It means that it's like his mind, right? Going towards that, the daily routine, but also like thinking about it, like retrograde thinking. Okay, let's start over. Like, what do we want for, how are we going to do this? That's a retrograde thing. Like, let's forget everything. We're starting over, especially with Uranus retrograde also influencing it. It's like, okay, let's make up our own martial art. I mean, that's the kind of thing that would be indicated by retrogrades, especially with Uranus in here. And that's why, like, I'm the way I am. Uranus retrograde on the ascendant. I'm just like, I'm gonna do my thing. I'm not worried about everyone else. I'm just gonna do my thing. Yeah. Alrighty. Let's go to the Queen of Bugs. The Queen of Bugs is Nicole Kidman. She is the bug queen. And she's got Saturn and poor dignity in the 6th. It's a trine moon. Daytime chart. 3rd and 4th lord in the 6th. Now this one, I'm just going to pause for a second to look her up. All right. For Nicole Kidman, I'm going to read a little bit from Wikipedia. Because it describes a lot. This is real quick. So she was born in Hawaii while her Australian parents were temporarily in the United States on visa. Her mother, a nursing instructor, remember it's ruling the 3rd and 4th house, nursing instructor in the 6th. Remember the women's electoral lobby, edited her husband's books, so very 6th house themes. Her father was a biochemist, health clinical psychologist, and author. Younger sister was a journalist and a TV presenter. still very sixth house things, having been born in she'll dual citizenship. Her father, when she was born, her father was a graduate student. He became visiting fellow. Post the Vietnam War, his parents participated in anti-war protests. She was very shy, it says. She revealed that she was timid as a child, saying, "I'm very shy, really shy. I even had a stutter as a kid, which I slowly got over, but I still regress into that shyness. So I don't like walking into a crowded restaurant by myself. I don't like going to a party by myself." So okay. I think those are all relevant. So third, fourth, in the sixth. So we are talking about mental health here, right? Especially because Saturn's not well dignified. So I do think there's some mental health issues. She's very shy, which would be third house indicator, or fourth house, third and fourth house, because youth, but also like her communication, in the sixth house, so like daily work, daily grind, mundane stuff. It's Saturn, so it's going to take a while to develop. Also, she was in a lot of TV stuff, which would be a sixth house thing. Of course, movies, right? But yeah. There's a trine to Moon and Venus. It's part of the Grand Fire Trine. So that's really nice. Um, she's Scorpio rising, Neptune and Scorpio. So she kind of got that dark, exotic, sexy, but creepy kind of thing going on. Mars, Saturn in Aries. So there's a mixed reception here. Mars in Libra. Mars is in domicile in Aries. Saturn's exalted in Libra. Not exact, but close enough between 6th and 12th house. Some exchange there. So that's like TV, movies, creativity, writing. So I don't know how much she writes and produces and directs and edits and all that, but she could do all that. I think she does. Right? Because the sixth house, 12th house can also be like behind the scenes, writing, editing, producing, directing, right? All these are the cadent houses, 3, 6, 9, and 12. These are excellent for writing and whatnot. And then of course, Sun in Gemini in the 8th. Very dark. Mysterious, creepy. But yeah, there could be, because Saturn's not in good dignity here, there could be a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. It's really the third house of the mind, and health, mental health, right? So I think she has some mental health problems, right? I think that's part of the issue, and definitely a lot going on with her early life with her parents, and they had a lot of sixth house Saturnian themes. So, yep, that's that. Let's go to Winehouse, Amy Winehouse. Amy, who never went to rehab or never went back to rehab. All right. Saturn, Pluto, Scorpio, Libra. Difficult, difficult, difficult. Saturn in conjunct Chiron in the 12th. Saturn sextile Moon. Saturn ruling, dispositing Moon, so dignifying the Moon. Moon's the second lord, so her voice, right? It's got the very earthy, kind of gritty voice that has some dignity after all, even though it's not in good dignity here. But 0 degrees is really a powerful, potent placement. So it's an important dignity. Moon in Capricorn, opposite its domicile, but receiving that sextile from Saturn by 1 degree. Um, so um, definitely having that some dignity there. Saturn ruling the MC and the eighth whole sign house, ninth cusp, ninth whole sign house, MC. So 10th quadrant. Uh, Definitely not so religious or philosophical, this ninth house, but definitely having to do with celebrations, adventure, partying, living it up. It's pretty much trying the ascendant, not exactly, but it's pretty successful that. Um, yeah. Interesting that Ceres is conjunct the MC because she did have issues around food, diet. I mean, I think she was kind of anorexic at one point or looked close to it anyway. But let's see. So this is rolling her MC in her ninth house in the sixth. So it's very conflicted. Very it's conjunct Pluto. It's positing the moon. So having to do with her heart, her emotions, or at least how where that's coming from, the dispositorship, right? Moving towards this. Um, and this is a really destructive one because it's Saturn in Scorpio conjunct Pluto in Libra. So obsessive about relationships, but also really needing a lot of control. Um, and perhaps not getting it in the way that she wanted it. Um, Eighth house, eighth lord, in the sixth house. It's also not good because then, well, eighth and the sixth is not bad because now you're combining malefics, right? So that's okay, but it's also her ninth house, her philosophy, her perspective on life, which is very important. You have to have a good view on life in order to, that's sort of like your compass, right? It's our compass in life, our direction, um how we conceive of life itself, the universe, God, religion, philosophy, right? That's not going to be so good with the Saturn conjunct Pluto. It's going to be a bit too heavy, destructive. Saturn Pluto combinations are just way too intense. Um, they can be good, but they can also not be good. Um, and this is combining two different things. It's combining, the obsessive relationships and then the really a need for control with Saturn and Scorpio. Um, Somebody's knocking on my door. I have to go. 1 second. Sorry about that. It's not a distraction. All right. So Amy Winehouse. I think Saturn in the sixth is generally quite good, um, in that it can make a person really hardworking, right? And the sixth house would be great for anything academic, writing, whatnot. So but this was a pretty harsh placement for her, and definitely, especially with this in conjunct to Chiron from the 12th, 12th quadrant anyway, definitely hinting at mental health issues. Also, the opposition to uh, Uranus, particularly in the 12th, Jupiter. Jupiter's quite good in Sag and in its own bounds, but is Saturn, Pluto, very difficult, and very conflictual as well, creating a lot of mm, tensions with people, and like she was kind of uh, sharp and critical, and made enemies, made some not always nice to other people, but anyway. Alrighty. I think this was one of the things that led to her demise, this combination. Too not a great combination, too intense. Sorry, just got a little distracted there. All right, let's go to Daniel Craig. All right. So Saturn with Mars, look at that conjunction. Daniel Craig, 007, Mars in Aries, conjunct Saturn in Aries, 1 arc minute apart. I mean, that's ridiculous. Mars is his ascendant lord, Saturn is his third and fourth lord. So his communication, expression, skills of the hands, and fourth is, upbringing, childhood, also like the kind of quality that he brings, which would be of his youth or of his homeland, right? Representing sort of that with his Saturn in the sixth. Sixth house for series, for repetition, right? James Bond doing the same role again and again and again, right? Reprising that. And that Mars Saturn conjunction, right? So tight. In a sense, you could say that like if Mars and Saturn are exactly conjunct, almost like a Kazemi, where a planet is in the heart of the sun. What's really interesting is like, when a planet is further away from the sun, we say it's combust, but when it's exactly conjunct the sun, we say it's Kazemi. And Kazemi is better than combust. Reason being, it's almost like the in the eye of the hurricane. That's a really good analogy. Like if you want to understand like the exact conjunction versus applying or separating, the exact conjunction, it has a quality almost like in the eye of the hurricane, where in the eye of the hurricane, it can be calm and peaceful and quiet. And you only really get the rough expression of those two indicators, planets, when you have some separation, right? It's like when you're in the midst of something, you don't quite understand it yet. You don't quite fully get the full implications of it. Only when you're separate do you fully get the complete picture and effects of what that situation was about. When they're completely united, it's a little bit different. It's not as yeah, the two planets are merging energies. They're not competing, they're not fighting. So anyway, this gives him a very Saturnian quality, right? But not in a disharmonious way, even though Saturn's in Aries. It's now there still can be issues with Saturn, but it's actually going to be probably a lot easier than if they were a few degrees apart, right? This exact conjunction is really just like making him very kind of hard, cold, like 007. Like he's a boss man. He commands a lot of respect. This is the Mars and Saturn of combination that's really, really intense with Daniel Craig. That's why he could play 007. That's why a lot of his other roles don't he's played a lot of other roles. They just don't work as well. He's not going to be able to play like somebody who's really light and easygoing and you know airy fairy whatever. He's going to play these really, really intense roles and he's going to do it really well. Right? There's also the sesq square to Neptune and Scorpio, so some exotic, dark kind of sexiness that he brings to it with Neptune. Also like the imagination, great for movies, great for film. Yeah. Mm. So sixth house is also very like fighty house, conflict oriented, things like that. All right. Moon is here as well. North node. North node's increasing. Moon is bringing the emotionality, the expression to that sixth house. So very strong sixth house. Let's keep going. Seventh house. Johnny Depp. All right. So I mean, Johnny Depp, Saturn in Aquarius retrograde. We know about that. It just happened with Amber Heard, right? Daytime chart, but so Saturn's not the worst planet. That's Mars as far as sect goes. But Saturn, it's in good dignity, but it's retrograde. And it's square Mercury and Venus, separating, but still. Um, Saturn's ruling the sixth and the seventh. So bringing in some of that conflict from the sixth house. Seventh house is also about legality and contracts, the court, the law, right? It worked out for him, but he's still having though that sixth, seventh house experience, going to court about relationships, right? And the difficulty that brings, the challenge. The retrograde will sort of indicate multiple relationships, even though it's Saturn. Setbacks, startovers, redos, that sort of thing. Square to Venus also would be another indicator of the difficulty that he has in relationships. So, Saturn in the seventh would also indicate just in general a way of relating to other people that tends to be very cold and hard. And if you see him in interviews just being who he is, like not not acting, he does very much, at least from what I've seen, express this Saturnian kind of cold, hard quality upon interactions that is very different from his Gemini sun. Even though it's trine, there is that Saturn really shows up in person. Right. Kurt Cobain, the Gen X legendary singer and rocker, singer-songwriter. All right. He's like a hero to my generation, for what he did to music, for music, rather. Right. Saturn, Venus, Chiron, and Mercury. All direct, but opposing Pluto, Uranus, right? And this speaks volumes to his main relationship, which we know of as Courtney Love, who a lot of people have no love for. Courtney Loveless. I'm just kidding. I'm sure a lot of people love her. Just not as many people who love Kurt Cobain. There's that. Saturn in Pisces. He would have had his second Saturn return coming up. A lot of people say that Courtney Love killed him, which, if we look at this opposition, it does not seem unlikely. Can I say that's what it happened? I don't know. I'm not. I don't like the thing where people are just like, they want something to be true, so they demand it is, and they have no evidence, and that happens all too often. Maybe I'm guilty of that sometimes. I try not to be, but yeah. Anyway, definitely difficulty with relationships. I mean, Venus is here, so there's a lot of good there to be had. Saturn is in its own bounds. So there's some dignity to Saturn. There's a trine to Jupiter, which is really nice. More hitting the Venus, and the Chiron, but still hitting the Saturn. Jupiter is exalted and ruling the Pisces house, and Neptune also trine. But this opposition to Pluto and Uranus, definitely not friendly. All right. Not friendly at all. Venus, the exaltation lord. That's also gonna get hit in the seventh. Mercury being opposite its domicile. That's not good. So I think this very much does tie into his early demise. Mercury in poor dignity, I mean, Chiron, not a major thing, but perhaps that somewhat. But Saturn, I think Saturn's the real problem here. It is a night chart, February, so this Saturn is, even though it's in its own bounds, it is malefic, definitely. So definitely issues around relationships that do not work out well for him, right? Even if Courtney Love didn't do it, I bet she was a huge part of it, right? Maybe she drove him to it. And I don't know the details, but definitely difficulty with relationships in a major way. Uh, there's some squares here, but they don't seem to be exact lining up with Saturn. Mercury square the MC. And that's probably good. I mean, that's definitely good because Mercury rules the MC. But, Ceres, Chiron, square. We have that now, I think, even or just recently. That's sort of like the I don't want to work square. That's what I call it. Anyway, let's keep going. I'll find my place. Let's go to Mr. M&M's, Mr. Chocolate Coated Candy. It's got to be silly. All right. Saturn in Gemini retrograde, seventh daytime chart. Part of this grand air trine, right? Saturn in Gemini does generally not bad because air, triplicity, trine its domicile and exaltation in the other air signs. But he married, I can't remember her name. It was like his childhood sweetheart, but then they broke up. And yeah, didn't work out well for him. Saturn is square the MC, so that's a nice contact. Um, Saturn's ruling the second and third house, so that's his voice and his expression, dispositing his moon trine, right? And then we also get Uranus trine. Ceres, Sun is also in there. This whole, Libra stellium will play into that. But Moon, Saturn. And so he's able to express his heart and his sun and his Uranus, all these planets, through his Saturn in Gemini. Saturn's going to be a bit more hard and cold and, in relationship to, and he's like that, like he comes off like really tough, cold, hard, Saturnian. His lyrics are kind of cold and hard and harsh, which is also part of the poor dignity of, the Venus and Virgo, Mars and Libra, Sun in Libra, right? There's a lot of poor dignity that gets expressed through his music, but also part Jupiter and Capricorn, but also partly this Saturn, um, Jupiter square Pluto's intense. Um, yeah. Um, I mean, there's more I don't want to get into that, but yeah, his expression is very Saturnian and it's retrograde. Like he just doesn't give up an F, just to keep it PG, about how he's going to like come off as like cold, hard, tough guy, and his relationships are suffer because of that. He's very um aggressive, right? Like he's always just like coming off as like yelling at people and like cursing at people and just being really mean. But he's very talented, so I guess he can get away with it. So that's Mr. Eminem's terrible name, if you ask me. Shitty fucking name, but whatever. I called myself the mediocre astrologer, so I guess I'm not one to talk. All right. David Bowie. Um, yeah, David Bowie, Saturn in Leo, with this moon. So if you look at the angles, three, three, the mid angle, midpoint three. So this moon, which I pointed out before, resonates with his whole chart. It's resonating with all the angles, extremely angular. That's why like David Bowie is just like this Leo moon resonates with all throughout everything he does. And it's just this full moon expressive. I mean, we're just getting this creative moon, this overflowing creative moon. It's so angular, right? It's just such a personal planet to him. But then it's also conjunct to Saturn and Leo, which and Pluto, which is tough and hard, and it's also retrograde. Um, and he's had tons of relationships, like all different kinds, including gay ones, um, including ones that he was kind of experimental, like okay, like experimenting with being gay, I guess. But I think that the gay, I read that like the gay community wanted him as an ally and a spokesperson, and he didn't want to. He's not really gay, like he's not. He's just like having fun, I guess. Whatever. Pluto, in Leo retrograde, right? The retrogrades, like his relationships are. He doesn't care. He married a black woman, Iman, model. So interracial, gay, like whatever, like he's just gonna do whatever he wants. Saturn is in its own bounds, so that probably helps a lot. It's gonna be just more natural and at home, even though it's in Leo. So this probably makes him a little bit shy or apprehensive with other people, but it's Leo, but it's retrograde. Pluto, psychological. Um, I mean, it's yeah, it gives them a mixed authority, I guess you could say, because I mean, the Pluto really intensifies it. The moon is so powerful. The Saturn's, not in great dignity, but does have some dignity, being in sun bounds. Um, Day chart, it's dispositing. Oh, so moon, sorry, not moon, sun, Saturn, mutual reception. Um, some people say the planet in poor dignity cannot receive, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know, that's not true, but it's probably a weakened or diminished ability to have that receptive quality. But it's 12th house and 7th house. So all Saturn's is ascendant lord, of course. Um, so some physical weakness, you could say. Um, and really resonating with that moon, but also Pluto transformation. And he was a chameleon. He transformed so many different times, right? But definitely that retrograde is going to give him that the pure stuff, the pure energy, but also not going with the sun. But at the same time, in sun sign, mutual reception with the sun. So there is like this quality of taking the mainstream and like twisting it to the retrograde, back and forth, right? Going mainstream, going against the mainstream, going back with the mainstream. So he was kind of a maverick in that sense, right? So that is really interesting. But 12th house is very creative, and dispositing, Sun, Mars, Mercury from the 12th. Um, yeah, so very interesting, but difficult relationships for sure. All righty, let's go to the 8th house, and we're going with Mr. King, the King Man, civil rights king, the king of civil rights, MLK. Capitan, conjunct the MC, Sun in Capricorn, in its own bounds. So this Sun, very Saturnian, right? Saturn, Saturn. And then Saturn is in its own bounds in Sag. So Saturn's in the 8th, ruling his Sun, dispositing his Sun, dispositing the MC, dispositing the 10th whole sign house. So his career and Mercury, right? So his career was strongly Um, influenced by the Saturn, right? The MC is in the ninth whole sign house. So what did he do? He was a preacher originally, a religious preacher, and then he became a civil rights leader. Philosophy, religion, the ideology of freedom for black people, right? Like no discrimination based on color of skin. Right now, they turned it on its head and they're like, oh, it's okay to be racist towards white people, which is insane and stupid and still racist. And Martin Luther King would not approve. But anyway, yeah, he was a very admirable, very, great man and great speaker. Eighth house. Eighth house is does have to do a lot with leadership, and being a boss in a personal sense, right? But it is also dealing with secrets, hidden things, um, psychology, death, rebirth, which he did have. Like his whole career metamorphed, transformed, right? From being a preacher to being a worldwide civil rights leader or American civil rights leader, worldwide inspiration, you could say. And look at the degree, 25-25. So yes, Saturn, even though semi-sextile, dignifying the sun, right? Big time. Saturn in its own bounds, Sun in Saturn's um, domicile and bounds. So Sun and Saturn are playing tight together. Um, yeah, those are the only two planets that are at that 25 degree, 28 and MC nodes. So now we know his MC, his calling is tied to his nodes of destiny. North node in the first house. So that's, yeah, strong destiny, strong career. Um, eighth house is death. So, he died, which, everyone dies, right? But he died young. He died before his time. Saturn opposite Mars. It's not exact, but there is that, and that's a dangerous opposition. It's not one that where either of these signs gains or loses dignity. However, I think Saturn would be better in Gemini and Mars and Sag, but you know, the Mars Saturn opposition is still pretty bad. And then it's disposited by Jupiter in, well, first whole sign house, eighth lord in the first, Chiron. Anyway, uh, Saturn in the eighth can be great for, like, raising money, because then, um, Saturn can organize, and the eighth house can be about, shared resources. Right. So you can have somebody who can organize around gathering resources and also getting involved with secret things and hidden things, which we won't know about. Like I won't be able to, like, yeah, he was involved in this secret thing and that secret thing and that secret thing, because they're secret and they're hidden. But there was definitely the secret organizations involved in his life, like the CIA and other things like that. But yeah, this is a pretty boss, and it's also in Sagittarius, religion, philosophy, right? It's a pretty boss place. I mean, Saturn in the eighth, if it doesn't kill you, it's definitely going to give you a lot of power and strength, and control, and a lot to do with shared resources. So yeah, he probably could get a lot of people together and get a lot of money together as well to fund his organization. And then, of course, huge 11th house, group, network, community going on. So, yeah, already. MLK. Let's see, where are we? Oh, yeah. Robert Downey Jr. Another thing about any of the water houses and Saturn. Saturn in the fourth, eighth, or 12th can indicate jail time or time in a hospital, right? Saturn time, Saturn restrictions, Saturn law, Saturn authority, 12th house hidden. So being locked up in some place, whether it's a hospital, a jail, prison, mental institution, being held at home, captive, being held as a prisoner somewhere, right? Things like that. And it certainly applies for Robert Downey Jr., who had drug problems. In fact, he grew up with drug problems. He did drugs with his father, unfortunately. That's a terrible thing because then it's like you associate drugs with the father and love and the nurturing that you get from your parent. So that's not good. He had a drug problem. He did overcome it, and then he became Iron Man, second house. But look at this opposition. Uranus, Saturn, directly opposed to each other. Also Pluto, and then Mars, really tightly. And then Saturn, Chiron series. Definitely some issues there. Right? Saturn ruling the sixth and seventh. So relationships leading towards, eighth house themes: sex, drugs, criminality, poor behavior. Especially in Pisces. Pisces is not, there's no real boundaries with Pisces. So it definitely lends itself to misbehaving with drugs and alcohol and the like. Right. Sixth house in the eighth is not so bad. Sixth house in the eighth can mean winning conflicts, where conflicts go to die, because malefic lord and malefic house tends to kill the malefic nature. It's a double negative. So there can be, so like, conflicts, he can win conflicts. Conflicts can die there. But seventh house in the eighth, seventh lord in the eighth house is you know, it's definitely like can lead, there's a tendency towards intimacy with partners. So like you meet somebody, you sleep with them, right? Saturn may restrict that. Saturn might have a harder way of expressing that. It could be other things. But like bad behavior, meeting people and then doing bad things with them. Drugs, alcohol, crime. Obviously, in this case, especially with this opposition, very bad opposition, right? But good if you can handle it. Good, it'll express itself well in movies. Also, look at this moon, Neptune, directly opposed to each other, and the Chiron also playing in there, right? Really, really interesting. Great for, that's great for movies. Fortune 18 degrees. So anyway, yeah, so like he appears, this has like everything to do with his appearance, his presence, right? So this is why he can be Iron Man, and then he's gonna fight some bad guys, right? Saturn, Chiron in the eighth house, very strong bad guys. So anyway, yeah, interesting stuff. Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud. He's a fraud. No, just kidding. You gotta change it. Why isn't it? I need a new computer. It's not, there we go. Alrighty. Saturn and Gemini in the eighth house, right? Eighth whole sign, eighth quadrant. Eighth house of psychology. Saturn, science. Gemini, intellect, curiosity, exploring the psychology. Saturn, very hard, right? Jupiter, ring in Jupiter with a square. Saturn, Jupiter. So the philosophy, we saw this with Freud too. Saturn, Jupiter, right? Neptune also, right? So a little more Neptunian, fantasy, delusion. Jupiter and Pisces, Neptune and Pisces. square Saturn. So he's bringing this this huge imagination, expansion of Neptunian and Piscean things. I mean, Freud, if you know anything about him, he was doing coke, right? Fifth house, Saturn, I mean, Jupiter, Neptune, and Pisces. I mean, would you expect him not to do coke with this combination? I don't, I mean, there wasn't the stigma back then about it, but anyway, yeah, definitely like fifth house, enjoyment, fun games with Jupiter, Neptune, and Pisces. Like, wow, I'm surprised if he wouldn't be doing coke or whatever, drugs, alcohol, right? Um, and then Saturn in the eighth, very in intellectual Gemini, very curious in its own bounds, exploring psychology, exploring themes of sex. Eighth house, not fifth house. Fifth house has nothing to do with sex. Pluto does. Scorpio does. Scorpio rising. But so Saturn ruling the third house, his intellect. Fourth house, home, roots, family, parents. Right? This whole thing was Oedipus complex. It's a daytime chart. This could give him there are problems with this Saturn, then it has to do with his relationships. It has to do with his how he's relating to perhaps his clients. Perhaps he had issues, problems with clients because Saturn's in the eighth, it's not in the seventh. Right. So it's not equal relationships, it's not like his partnerships, it's his parents, youth, upbringing, siblings, but it's also representing his intellect and the way he psychologically relates to other people, which would be the eighth house. Okay. Salvador Dali. Salvador Dali also had sex problems. Saturn in Aquarius in the eighth. He couldn't be intimate, so Saturn's ruling the seventh and the eighth. Saturn's in domicile in Aquarius, in the eighth house. He didn't have sex with anyone. Like he pretty much had a monogamous relationship. I think he had sex with his wife once or something like that, but he wasn't sexual. Seventh lord in the eighth house, Saturn, right? Freud had, issues with sexuality as well, but in a different way. So yeah, I mean that's fascinating. I mean it's a daytime chart. Saturn's in good dignity. It's square the sun, right? So Saturn's in the superior square to the sun. So that sexless kind of quality that he had from the eighth house, his psychology, his relationship with other people, intimacy is strongly coloring his personality, right? It was brought to the light, like it's something he couldn't even hide because of the contact with the sun, superior square. This is also, if you want to know like why he was like so exact with his paintings, like even though he's surrealist, right? So we can look at the Neptune square the moon and the MC for the surrealist quality, Neptune and Cancer in the 12th, but Saturn square the sun in Taurus with the Taurus stellium here. Well, three planets in four, yeah. In Taurus, Taurus is beauty, Taurus is painting, Taurus is pictures, but the Saturn makes it exact, right? Saturn makes it so precise, especially with this exact square to the sun, really bringing in that precision quality. And the time element, right? He's always painting watches. So there's a lot of Saturnian themes, psychology, secrets of the eighth house, mysteries of the eighth, sexuality, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's Dali. All right. Now we're gonna look at Tom Cruise. And here we have the ninth house with Mr. Scientology. Come on, that's too obvious. Saturn ruling eighth and ninth whole sign houses with the MC in the ninth whole sign house conjunct Saturn. Saturn in Aquarius retrograde and South Node. Square Neptune, right? You know what? It would be really funny if Tom Cruise got into astrology and he's like, oh wow, I'm really delusional about my religion. Saturn, Neptune in a superior square to Saturn. Like my religion is fantasy. Oh wow, what an enlightening realization. That's what astrology can do. Well, look at the degree. Okay, so like 8, 10, 9, 10, 12. Okay, pretty close, right? Proximity 10, 12, 10, angular midpoint 10. Yeah, so this Saturn is definitely tied in to a lot of things. Eighth house, secrets, hidden things. Well, like Scientology. Science is definitely has eighth house vibes, eighth, 11th, also Aquarius, right? Saturn. So very science religion, right? Scientific religion. This is his career. This is his calling. The Scientology retrograde, right? So he doesn't care how ridiculous he looks. He's like, I'm gonna go against everyone and be a Scientologist. A delusional Scientologist. Well, they're all delusional, right? Yeah. He's got a great chart though. Jupiter is in Pisces, stationary in its own balance. I mean, this Jupiter is like, God. I mean, it's so high in the sky. Um, but yeah. I mean, technically, this would be the high point in the sky. It's square the practically square the ascendant anyway. Um, yeah, it looks like the older he gets, the more he's going to move away from the Scientology thing. At least that's what it should be. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, he's pretty old by now, so I don't know how he is with Scientology anymore. But yeah, that's that. It's in good. Saturn's in good dignity, so he does have natural authority. Gets a lot of respect. But we all know that, the Saturn square Neptune, that's going to reduce the sort of believability of his credentials, right? It's slightly not fully operational there, but anyway. This Saturn would hit this angular midpoint here in Libra. It's not showing here, but it would be the descendant IC midpoint. It would be trine then. And that would give him a grand air trine if we include that. I mean, it's something. It's a contact. So anyway, definitely has a lit chart, Tom Cruise, but a little crazy too, a little delusional. That's okay. All right, let's go to Napoleon. Saturn ninth in Cancer, opposite moon. Mutual reception, but without dignity. So that's difficult, right? Um, what did he do? What did Napoleon do? He went to other lands. And so Saturn's ruling the third and fourth, right? So fourth house, land, right? Ninth house, travel, right? Foreign, exotic. And I mean, what did he do? He didn't do good things. I mean, he fought, right? And Saturn is in its own balance, so there's some dignity there, in fact. And being aspected by Moon, or Saturn's aspecting Moon, that seems to also. I still think there's going to be some amount of positive trade-off with an opposition like this. Yeah, a lot of difficulty, but it can work out, and it kind of does for Napoleon, right? I don't know the details, but he won a lot of battles. He took his third house, short distance neighborhood family with Pluto. Pluto's the strategist, the war strategist, strategy in general, right? Dispositing, Saturn's pulling in that as well as his moon, and third house, intellect and land, roots, family of origin, right? Moving to the ninth house of adventure, travel, foreign things. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Mercury is exactly conjunct the MC, right? So that's giving him extra ability to lead as far as his intellect, right? And his mind and his communication, dignified by the sun. I'm going too far with this. What aspects? I mean, Chiron, trine, that's not bad because it's the trine, right? Widely Jupiter, but what else? Yeah, I guess that's it. Ninth in the third, and then third and fourth in the ninth, with a mutual reception between Moon and Saturn. I think it works out, right? Like it does, it works out, right? Like he wins battles. So I think that's kind of the evidence, right? There that even though poor dignity, mutual receptions can have some, probably through struggle, depending on the aspect, but they can work out. His religion, his philosophy, probably not great. All right. Now we're going for the Lama of the Dalai. The Dalai Lama. He's a Lama doll. All right. Okay, so almost similar. So MC and Pisces in the ninth. Okay, he's a religious leader. Religious leader. It's literal, right? Saturn, Pisces, MC, ninth house, Pisces, Saturn, right? Um, he's a religious leader. Like that's literally his job. Also opposite moon. Really interesting. What else happened? Technically, this is a night chart. He was in exile. Saturn's not in exile here, but it is opposite. His moon's ascendant lord, right? Moon Virgo, Neptune. So there's this really difficult thing going on here where Saturn's in the ninth. Saturn creates separation, coldness, hardness, dealing with governments and authorities, the Chinese government, right? Opposite him, opposing him. He's opposed to a foreign authority, which is the Chinese government, and it forced him out. And Mercury's Moon's disposited by Mercury in the 12th. Mercury's in Gemini, so it's in good dignity, but it's in the 12th. So, like, if you look at that, it's very literal, right? Foreign lands. He went to foreign lands, but it worked out for him, right? He was saved through a turn of events. It wasn't automatic, right? It wasn't that he was like always going to be, exiled into India and everything. They would have imprisoned him. If they caught him, they would have imprisoned him, but he escaped. He was lucky. So there's some good, stuff going on in his chart that helped with that a lot. But yeah, really interesting. Saturn's ruling the seventh and eighth. It's the eighth lord. So relationships and then, transformation, death, rebirth, crisis coming into his ninth house, opposing his moon. Moon's the ascendant. I already said that. Dispositing his sun. Yep. So that's that. There's some issues there. Also, Pluto, sesquisquare, Saturn. So another destructive influence. Mars. Oh, no, Mars is towards Mars in conjunct the MC. Anyway, sextile fortune. So there's some fortune. Fortune doesn't mean good fortune. It just means some kind of fortune, right? There's some kind of fortune attached to this Saturn in the ninth. Him as a leader, but also him as opposing authority, foreign authority. Pisces. Pisces is the sign of dissolution, being in exile or foreign, being in foreign lands, exotic places, loss of authority. He lost his authority to some extent. Let's go with the other Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson had a baby, and it was Marilyn Manson. That's not true, but that's what I think. That's what I think happened. I'm just kidding. That's what I think he imagined happened. Saturn and Aries in the ninth house. I mean, this describes his philosophy in life, his religion, which is not very nice, not very evolved, not very dignified, let's put it that way. But if you like dark, ugly, heavy music, it's probably pretty good, I guess. I was never really into it. It's just like too, yeah, just too gross, kind of. And I was also older when he became popular. But anyway, Saturn ruling the sixth and the seventh. Um, so the sixth lord actually probably helps him write music, right? Undignified music, because ninth house will be something that you study or take to a high level, right? Gain your master's degree or the equivalent or whatever, PhD, just something high level, just something that you studied and really developed. Make it sophisticated. I'm not saying that his music is all that sophisticated, but sophisticated enough to for him to, be well known, for people to be talking about him. Um, and then his relationships, I was thinking about beautiful people, right? Venus and Pisces, so seventh house. So that's obviously something that he thinks about, beautiful people, because Venus and Pisces and Venus's bounds, that's really good. That's a really good placement. So he probably does have some good relationships initially, but then they go to Saturn and Aries in the ninth. So philosophy, very selfish, kind of Saturnian, restricted philosophy. No religion. There's no religion here. No, I mean, if it's a religion, it's a very dark religion, maybe Satanism. I mean, what do you want for Saturn in Aries in the ninth house? Direct. Um, it's just going to be very selfish, very self-motivated, egotistical, skeptical, not able to embrace anything more refined or subtle or higher minded. There's the square to sun, where sun's in the superior position, and that's actually a mixed reception, because sun's exalted in Aries, Saturn rules Capricorn. So somehow the conflict of the sixth house is going to the ninth house. But again, the sort of academic quality of the writing can be elevated. With the dark themes, the Saturn dark and the Aries aggressive quality. I mean, of course, Mars is in Scorpio, Neptune's in Scorpio. So he has that in other places as well. And he probably has a very good aesthetic sense with this Venus exalted in Venus's bounds. So that's his MC Lord. So yeah, definitely dignifying the career. It's not aspecting it, but still really good. All right. Let's see. Okay, let's go to the 10th house. And we're gonna literally look at Adolf Hitler's chart. Literally Hitler. This is literally Hitler's chart. All right. Saturn in Leo in the 10th house. I don't know if I should tell you this, but I have Saturn in Leo in the 10th whole sign house. I'm not Hitler, but maybe sometimes I appear like I am. No, I was kidding. Saturn ruling the third and fourth house, dispositing his moon, Jupiter, South Node in Capricorn, where they're not dignified, but his intellect, his communication, and his home, his roots, his political ideology. Saturn is a leader, but Saturn in Leo is not necessarily a very mature leader or evolved leader, strong leader, dignified leader, right? Leo's a bit too, I mean, what Saturn and Leo have in common is that they can both lead. Saturn, Leo leads from the front. Leo leads by being the center spotlight. Saturn leads from behind the scenes, actually doing the work, the hard, making the laws and keeping them there, right? Enforcing them and all that. So Saturn doesn't really like to be at the head, but it can. It's just going to be a bit because Saturn is not very leonine. It's not polished, it's not refined, it's old, it's grumpy, it's mean, and it's a bit of a tyrant. And in Leo, it just gets exposed. It's the tyrant in all its glory, right? With a spotlight on him, right? We could just see Hitler with, and I'm like that sometimes, unfortunately, or fortunately. But anyway, leadership, authority, respected or not. Yeah, I mean, some people respected him. Obviously, Saturn is in its own bounds, so that's good, right? There is some level of authority or dignity there. It's a wide square between Venus and Mars. But fourth house is definitely homeland, politics. Third house is communication, intellect, and also dispositing this moon, Jupiter, South Moon. So there's a lot going on, a lot riding on this Saturn, right? Moving and then disposited by the sun at 0 degrees Taurus. Yeah. 0 degrees Taurus, like the ultimate stubbornness, the ultimate stubborn sun. Angular. Alrighty. It's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, he was a dictator, and that's pretty much what this calls for. I try not to be a dictator, but nobody listens to me, so I'm good. I'm good. Nobody cares what I say. Not many people. Michael Jackson. Saturn and Sag conjunct the MC to the degree, right? Sextile Chiron in the 12th in Aquarius. So a very unique leader. Saturn ruling the 11th and 12th. So the 12th house of creativity, right? Dignifying this Chiron. This Chiron's opposite Venus. So there's some psychological insecurity there, but it's generally okay because of Saturn. Squaring Mars. Maybe a bit of paranoia, perhaps. 11th house. Fans, popularity, career success, right? Huge fan base, cult fan base. Yeah. Groups, networks, Jackson 5, but really Saturn conjunct the MC is kind of like solo leadership. Saturn doesn't really, well, Saturn, I guess Saturn could share, but it's so strong when it really represents leaders, commanders, captains, authority figures. Sagittarius is going to be very sort of wild and expressive. Pretty much trine Venus and Mercury, Uranus also playing in there. And then even the South Node somewhat. So it's pretty much grand fire trine, not super tight, but still there. A lot of fire, passion. Yeah. The other thing the 12th house can often point to is dance, right? Because now we're talking about, at least, if we're looking at the body parts, well, the feet, right? And so the feet are, probably one of the main influences in dance. I mean, it's not everything, but also the creativity that comes from the 12th house. But yeah, there's a lot of other factors that go into it. I'm not going into all of them right now. Miley Cyrus. Okay. So yeah, her MC is actually in the 10th whole sign house because her ascendant's right at the end of Taurus. It's 13 degrees Saturn direct. Pretty close to the MC. Not exactly conjunct. Jupiter in Libra is exactly trine the MC. So hugely dignifying her career from the 5th. But Saturn's ruling, sorry, I had to burp. Saturn's ruling the 9th and the 10th, and her MC. Dispositing Venus, Uranus, Neptune. So a lot of creativity from the 9th house and bringing in ninth house themes into the 10th house. So adventure, celebration, partying, but also, I don't know. I wouldn't expect her to be very religious with this, but definitely like having a strong philosophical influence within her career. Right? It's a bit too wild and weird here with the Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn. Capricorn is not very religious in itself. I mean, it could be conservative religion, but she's not conservative. Um, but bringing in travel, adventure. I mean, she's got, Sag placements as well. A lot of the celebratory nature that she has. And Saturn is just giving her a lot of authority, a lot of respect, a lot of a very long career, and one where she will continually succeed and be like, a leader in her field, right? Um, yeah. Community, groups, networks, friends, Aquarius. Um, so we're probably going to see a lot of Miley Cyrus, just throughout her life. She'll probably just continue to succeed and succeed. I mean, she got Jupiter and Saturn, both. Saturn's a dignity, Jupiter's Jupiter, both really dignifying her career. Um, so her MC, I mean, she's wild. She's got this Mars and Cancer in the 3rd. So don't expect her to behave herself. Moon, Pluto, Scorpio, Mercury, Sagittarius. Anyway, um, I don't hate her. I know she's wild. She does stuff that's out of bounds, out of line, but I don't hate her. Um, she's very likable, but they corrupted her. Alrighty. Uh, Einstein, Einstein, Einstein. Saturn, Aries, Mercury, part of fortune, Venus. I do this every single chart. It's so annoying. Saturn Mercury combinations, great for science. Now, will people listen to Mr. Einstein with this Saturn in Aries? Probably not, because there's not a lot of dignity there. But it's disposited by Mars in Capricorn, where Mars is exalted and Mars is balanced. So this Mars is super strong in the 7th house. So they're gonna listen to this Mars. And Mars, Saturn, not by degree, the degrees are off, but by sign, mutual reception. And then the nodes are in harmony with the Fortune, Mercury, Saturn, right? By degree, pretty close. Interestingly, that his MC is in Pisces and Jupiter, and then his sun's in Pisces. So his calling is actually about philosophy, right? Some kind of philosophy. This is making it very scientific philosophy, which is scientific theory, which is the theory of relativity and all, all that stuff, right? But fortune, and then Mercury, Saturn, science, right? And then Mars, Capricorn, science also. I mean, Mars and Capricorn, not necessarily science, but Capricorn is about, it can be, it's very, it's Saturnian ruled. And then we got the North Node in Aquarius, Jupiter in Aquarius. Aquarius is probably more scientific, not probably. Aquarius is more scientific than Capricorn, but Capricorn can be, right? Because it's just a very contractive, conservative, accomplishment-oriented sign. This is not good for relationships, but definitely this is where people will listen to him. It is, this Saturn, not so much, but Mars and Capricorn, yeah. So he does gain respect through that. Yeah. Also, there's a nice trine by 2 degrees between Mars and Pluto. Yeah, Saturn's ruling the 7th and 8th. I think the 7th house in the 10th, that probably really helped with his relationships with the career enhancing relationships, developing good relationships that helped his career, that helped his success. But the 8th house is definitely for the research, the deep diving, the secrets, the hidden things that he was able to discover, bring out. All right. Einstein. Let's go to house 11. And we're looking at DJT, everyone's favorite president. To hate or to love, right? I don't know. All righty. Saturn, Jupiter, mutual reception by exaltation. Saturn is exalted in Libra, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So even though he has Saturn in Cancer in the 11th house, he's extremely popular. But you wouldn't think so with the poor dignity Saturn, 11th house. You'd think, oh, that nobody's going to want to. Yeah, that's not good dignity, the crowd. But the Jupiter stationary, and has the mutual reception, not too far off by the degree. Yes, square aspect, but still, right? Resources, assets, appearance, presence, right? Chiron and Neptune in the second, like, yeah, people have issue with the way he looks, with the way he presents himself. But he's got this Jupiter and stationary there. It's just like ridiculous. Who cares? It's like he can look at however he wants. He's worth billions of dollars. Not the richest man in the world, not by far, but still he's a billionaire, right? So that's quite an accomplishment. Saturn ruling 7th by anaretic degree, 6th and 7th. So Saturn ruling the mundane house, 6th house, academic house, service to others, right? And then 7th house, relationships in general. What's nice is that it is ruling the 6th house, which is conflictual, but it's also service oriented. So he does get into fights with, or disagreements or conflicts within groups and whatnot. But there's also an element of serving the public, the groups, his network, his friends. And then 7th and the 11th, that's also good because of popularity, like personal relationships are going into group networks, right? And career success. And so there's some dignity here because of the Jupiter Saturn mutual reception. Also in Jupiter's bounds, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so that's interesting to have that Jupiter Saturn mutual reception. And Saturn, just in general, Saturn the 11th is great group organizer, group leader. There's that. And yes, some people just don't have any respect for him. So that's going to happen too. Saturn and poor dignity. Um, a lot of people don't have respect for him, but a lot of people do. Elon Musk. Now his Saturn's in a much better sign than Trump's. There's no mutual reception here. Let's see. Saturn ruling the seventh and eighth. So again, personal relationships going into groups and networks. Technically, this is the 12th whole sign house, but because it's so early and it's much closer to the 11th cusp, I'm calling it 11th. But think about this. What does he do? He bought, I mean, he does so many different things, right? The guy's ridiculous, but he bought Twitter, called it X. 11th house, Gemini, Saturn, leader, organizer, group, group leader. 7th house, 8th house, dispositing his 8th house. So he's tying in his, the resources from his 8th house endeavors, which is like, Tesla, all that, right? Mars is cars. Aquarius is electricity. North Node is destiny, right? Aquarius is also outer space and satellites and computers and technology. 8th house is digging holes, right? So there's so much to be gained from this. But the 11th house, groups, networks, media, communication, 7th and 8th house. Yeah, the shared resources, the unlimited resources that he's created for himself with others, went into his acquisition of Twitter, essentially, right? His money. His money, other people's money, right? His investors. Opposite Neptune, which is interesting. Saturn opposite Neptune. There's some perhaps delusion as far as his leadership goes, or fantasy, right? I don't necessarily agree with everything Elon Musk says. Why would I? Don't necessarily agree with everything anyone says, but he has a lot of visions, and that's a Neptunian quality: visions, dreams, fantasies, right? But it depends how you use them. But some of the things he says, like computers or AI is could become so dangerous it could like become a danger to humanity. I don't agree with that. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I don't share his answer to that is, oh well, we have to keep up and we got to put computer chips in our brain just in order to compete with the AI. That's ridiculous. No, I'm not doing that. But no way, no how. But that's Elon Musk. I mean, that's part of this North Node, Mars, Aquarius, 8th house, the psychological, right? The other people's psychology. You got to put my Aquarian, Mars, North Node in your brain because that's what other people. That's the 8th house, right? So really interesting there. But yeah, I mean, this really makes a lot of sense, especially considering his media presence, his Twitter acquisition, social media. And I know he has plans, not just Twitter, X, but he wants to make an app for that. He wants to make an app that the app of all apps, basically, essentially, right? The app to rule apps, one app to rule them all. Have everything involved and do everything from one app. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on. All right. Now we're going to Sharon Tate. Saturn in the 11th, also in Gemini, but with Uranus retrograde. And you know what happened to her? She was murdered by the Manson family. She was married to always forget his name. So I'm gonna open up the chart so I don't misrepresent. Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski. Yeah. But anyway, so let's see what's going on here. Saturn ruling the 7th and the 8th lord. So it's a little bit different from Elon Musk, even though very similar. First of all, retrograde. Second of all, Uranus. There's probably some bad aspects. Um, First of all, really nice uh air trine here at the early degrees. Um, Mercury, Neptune. Um, but let's see. We got a square here with fortune. And that's actually significant because it's fortune square Uranus and the midpoint, angular midpoint. So Uranus is conjunct the angle midpoint, which means it's right in the middle of ascendant MC, right at that midpoint. And then fortune, not good fortune, just some kind of fortune from the eighth house, is hitting that Uranus. Uranus is accidents. Uranus is trauma. Uranus is sudden events. Being that Saturn's the eighth lord, Gemini, Mercury. So there's a mutual reception, in fact, between Saturn and Mercury. And then the sun is also playing in there because it's conjunct Mercury, Mercury conjunct the sun, Mercury combust the sun, seventh house, eighth whole sign house. So there's a lot of eighth house activity. Uh, yeah. So Ascendant Lord Moon and Virgo, disposited by Mercury in the eighth whole sign house, can bust the sun. Anyway, yeah. Mercury trine Saturn, Mercury dignifying Saturn. Saturn's still retrograde and conjunct Uranus, Sun trine Saturn. Saturn trine the sun. So even trines, I mean, this is not a bad aspect, but I mean, the sun is somebody's light. The sun is somebody's vitality, right? We're not getting the moon playing in here, except the dispositor of the moon with Mercury. But then Saturn, the eighth lord from the 11th with Uranus, group, network, Manson family, right? Pluto, Pluto's sextiling. Pluto opposite, there we are. Pluto opposite sun is, I think, the real damaging aspect that shortened her life considerably, unfortunately. And then Fortune and Uranus. A Uranian fortune, not necessarily a good one. Uranus being the co-ruler of the eighth house Uranian fortune from the eighth. So yeah, definitely a lot of stuff going on here that added up to a short lifespan. Successful career, but short life. Van Gogh. Saturn in the 11th house. Now, here's a really nice indicator of what Saturn can restrict the career success. We know he died young. We know he had some mental health issues, right? Yeah, South Node Moon, North Node 12th house, Mercury conjunct Pluto widely. Not widely, it's out of sign, but it's 5 degrees. Anyway, Saturn ruling the 7th and 8th. So Saturn's the 8th lord in the 11th and the 7th lord. Saturn Uranus again, right? So one of the obvious things, which I just said, like he didn't sell a painting in his life. He died before he sold a painting. So career success. He had a career, he had a calling, he had a strong 10th house and MC. But the success of the career, the production of the career was delayed by Saturn, right? If he would have lived longer, he probably would have became well known. I mean, the paintings were not any worse. They were still the masterpieces they are now. It's just that they weren't recognized as such, right? Look at the degree of the MC to the nodes. This guy's careers is definitely significant, right? And then you see that Uranus is in that midpoint of the MC and node. Uh, Saturn dispositing this Chiron. I'm just wondering about like this whole like ear cutting thing with relationships. I wonder if I think perhaps there's not a direct correlation, but Saturn's trine. Saturn is actually by trine dignifying this Chiron. I think we'd have to do more with the South Node moon because that can really sort of mess with the mind. Sixth house. Sixth house is conflictual and cutting energy. But anyway, getting a field here. Eighth house, 11th house. I don't know how he died. I think like one thing said he was shot. I'm not sure. But Saturn's the eighth lord. Uh yeah, he had difficult time with friends, with groups, networks, and relied on his brother, I see in the third house, with third lord here in the 10th whole sign house, dignified by Aries sun, right? Um, the other interesting thing is that now that he's dead, he's immortalized, right? His paintings are timeless, right? So the career success was delayed, but Saturn elongates and strengthens and stands the test of time. So yeah, it's the complete opposite from when he was alive. Now he's like his paintings are worth millions of dollars. He could have been a millionaire many times over, right? Um, had he lived on that. So interesting. All right. Now we're going to Pooty Putin. Mr. Pooty. Vladdy Pooty. Okay. Saturn. Right. Saturn exalted in Libra conjunct the uh Sun opposite its exaltation. So exile, fall, exaltation. But it's in the 12th house, right? And you see this too much for my liking, but it just seems to be the way it goes. That 12th house politicians have a lot of 12th house planets, not always, but a lot of times. And what that indicates is that they're dealing with secret shit that they're not talking about, right? They're all in the secret organizations, and he was like a KGB guy, right? But anyone who says there's nothing secret about the 12th house, there's just like you can immediately write them off as an astrologist, be like, okay, okay, bye. I don't want to know anything from you because you don't know anything about astrology, or at least archetypes, or at least the houses. 12th house is totally secret. And if anyone says it's not, they're dumb, right? It's all secret. He's dealing with secret stuff, right? And Saturn in Libra is exalted, it's dignified, it's it's going to be listened to, it's going to be respected, right? Saturn's ruling the third, so it's intellect, and fourth house, homeland, North Node and Aquarius in the fourth. I mean, very, very much it's trying the North Node, Saturn, all about the homeland, Russia, motherland, Russia. He cares about it. Not going to deny that. Not going to dispute that. Right. Neptune also conjunct the MC. What does that say? Well, also says he has no problem lying to the public, right? To the career, to his public, but also Pluto and the Pluto South Node, right conjunct the MC. Very, very strategic, right? Very masterminding. And to the nth degree, Pluto is the planet that will take something to the ultimate uh uh ends, realization, right? Whatever that means. And it can mean total destruction. So a leader with Pluto will be very strategic. Obviously, Libra is going to be very diplomatic. It's going to value diplomacy and balance and peace. But that Pluto will take it to all the way to the let's blow up the whole fucking world, right? Let's destroy everything. That's Pluto will do that, right? So that's fun to think about. Um, but yeah, Saturn, that's his intellect. So he's very smart, but very secretive. It's combust the sun, so it's not gonna be very subtle. It's not gonna be very refined, but it's good. It still works. And it's combining with his personality, so it's gonna dignify the sun. Um, but Neptune, Mercury, that's in the 12th house. I mean, a lot of vision, a lot of imagination. Um, but interesting combination. Uh, you know, what else? We see, okay, 19, 18, 19, 21, 22, 17, 21. So a lot of the similar degrees, right? So they're all going to work together and make them quite successful. 22, right? Fortune. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Let's keep going. Uh, Mariah Carey. No, Jim Carrey. Mariah Carey. Right. Saturn, Venus. Tight, tight, tight. Same degree. Venus is her ascendant lord. So this is going to make her very Saturnian. Aries, it's not good dignity, right? So, but okay, like, how's her Saturn? Do you want Mariah Carey as president? You think she's going to be a good leader? Probably not, right? Like, pretty obvious. Uh, but 26 degree MC in the ninth, square Saturn. So Venus and Saturn dignifying her MC. Moon square. It's not tight, but also look at this. Mercury in Pisces, 24 degrees. Mercury is the second lord. That's her voice, right? So Venus is exalted in Pisces within 1 degree of each other, less than a degree apart. Mercury, the second lord, and Venus. So, Venus is the exaltation lord of Mercury. So even though it's semi-sextile, there's still some connection. So that is interesting. Saturn ruling the MC and the 10th whole sign house. So Saturn is our career. Taurus also, I mean, Taurus rising naturally is going to give indications of being able to sing, at least potentially. Saturn is going to create that contraction where she gets this like really insane whistleetto voice or whatever they call it, where she can do the like super high octave. This 12th house, that's Saturn, the Saturn's bounds, right? And there's also a quality of Aries about that, the focus of Aries, the shrill focus that can come from Aries, right? Moon is tying in there good, moon in the fourth in dignity, or at least conjunct the IC in Cancer. Jupiter's bounds. This moon's really good. Forever young, Venus retrograde, ascendant lord. She always looks like a little girl. So her style is her own. It's unique. It's Mariah Carey, whatever, whatever that is. So yeah. Um, Even though her MC's in the ninth, it's bringing in elements of adventure. Well, I don't think she's very. I don't know. I don't know if she's very religious, or philosophical, but like adventure, celebration, good times, joy, luck, travel, those sort of things. It's going to signify for her. And maybe some philosophy. Maybe she's a lot more philosophical than I'm giving her credit for, or religious. Maybe she's religious. I don't know. But the degree is tight there. 1 degree MC. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Very different kind of guy. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy. I was thinking of Al Bundy, Married with Children. I mean, not at all the same, not at all. But Bundy, I guess. Uh, Saturn, Fortune, Pluto in the first whole sign, but 12th quadrant. So, one thing about first whole sign, but 12th quadrant is that these are planets that are going to be less caught. Excuse me, I have to drink water. Sorry, my voice just went out for a second. Less conscious. They're going to be less conscious. Person not going to be as aware of them, but they're going to be more visible to other people. Same with 12th house, but just 12th house will be more subtle, right? These are not going to be that subtle, but the person's not going to have that much awareness. They're going to have less awareness of them. So it's going to have some 12th house, some first house significations, in essence. Saturn ruling the 7th and the 6th. 7th house, other people. 6th house, conflict, competitiveness. I mean, service to others, but I don't know if he was very service oriented. Like, I really just don't see him doing much, like, charity service kind of work. But mental health, 6th house, health, 12th house, psychology, personal psychology, mental health, 7th house, to bring Saturn, Pluto, right? Saturn's retrograde, Pluto's retrograde. Pluto's psychology and control and strategy. So he's strategizing, and Saturn's not in good dignity in Leo. It's very egocentric. And his retrograde really doesn't give a shit about what society's doing, but he's going to lure people into himself. He's going to lure people to him, right? Pluto wants control. Pluto is going to plan it out, and he's going to bring people to him. And then it's going into his 4th house with Sag, and then all this Scorpio nonsense. Here then Mars, and then Mars, Jupiter, and then Mars, right? Jupiter, Mars, mutual reception. 4th and 5th house, entertainment, Scorpio, home, sex stuff, Scorpios, murder, and all the crazy dark, goth craziness, death themes, horror, you get it. Egotism, not good. Night chart, Saturn's the malefic sect, it's retrograde, it's in poor dignity, it's conjunct Pluto. Fortune is here, so like there's some obvious fortune that not a positive fortune, but fortune nonetheless, that is tied to this Saturn in his 12th quadrant, first whole sign house, ruling the 6th and 7th. Opposite series, I'm not sure about that, but it is an opposition. Something mundane, work oriented. I don't know. I have to do more research to figure that one out. But Neptune is playing in there with a sextile, so some fantasy, delusion. Yeah. Not good. Not good. He was a real psychopath. So Saturn and Pluto are just so serious together, so heavy, so focused and concentrated, hard, cold, hard, deep, egotistical with the Leo, motivated, and just the retrograde. It's like, we don't give a shit. We're not going to do what you want us to do. All right. Last and not least, Whitney Houston. Oh, Saturn in the 12th, I forgot also to mention, can indicate jail time or being locked in prison of some kind. Like I said, all Saturn in water houses. But her Saturn's in good dignity. It's in Aquarius. It's retrograde, ruling the 11th and 12th. So this would indicate, especially early on, a lack of awareness about herself, because 12th house is personal psychology. Now Saturn, although in good dignity, is retrograde. it's a mature planet, retrograde, it's going to limit or slow her own ability to access her 12th house, which would be her own psychology. In other words, she needs to be woken up, and it might be a rude awakening. Her south node's dispositing, her Saturn's dispositing the south node and 11th house. So so fans or career success is going into 12th house, creativity. So her as an artist, but then the Saturn is in conjunct the north node. So it's going to be more agitated as she gets older, this Saturn. And it's a night chart. So it is a difficult planet, even though it's in good dignity. So this does indicate to me some mental issues, perhaps mental health concerns. Not terrible on its own, right? Because it's in good dignity, but some issues about her own mental health, her own psychology, perhaps paranoia or fear, or some mental blockage, creative block, subconscious block. It's not feeling good. I mean, planets in the 12th house are like things that we can't see or control, but they're there and we feel them. They're right behind us, Every time we turn around, they turn around with us, and we just can't get them, and they're annoying, but they're there. Saturn sextile Jupiter, moon. So that's nice. So Saturn gets a sextile from Jupiter and moon. So there's some nice remediation there. Saturn is pretty much opposite the sun and Venus widely. So that's also because sun's in the sixth. So then it does indicate some mental health opposition. Both are in good dignity, but they're opposed to each other. Saturn is, retrograde, is going against the sun. So something with 6th, 12th house issues. And there's a lot more to, I mean, I'm not trying to say this was the thing that made her turn to drugs and whatever else and ended her life early, but there is this issue, this opposition. Sun Saturn are not necessarily, they're not really good partners. I mean, they don't get along all that well generally. And if it's an opposition, that's not a great one. It's these two sides are pulling away from each other because they got nothing to do with each other. Saturn's fine there, Sun's opposite, fine there, but they're just not really getting along, not really harmonizing. So there's some schism between her 6th and 12th house. Her mundane daily work life and her own mental health. She probably feels like a prisoner in her own mind with Saturn here. And it's going to be difficult for her. And that's going to wake up as she gets older. Yeah, pretty interesting. Of course, she got, tremendous stuff going on here with the MC, the second house, and the sun. Jupiter stationary, grand fire trine. I mean, it's ridiculous in so many ways, but there's definitely some problems. So that's it, guys. Saturn in all the houses. I hope you found it interesting. If you learned something, if you enjoyed it, and I'm pretty much done for now. So, yep, I'm gonna put chapters up and all that, so it'll be easy to navigate. And that's it for now. Joe Waxman, the astrologer. Guys, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Book a reading with me, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And laugh it off. Take a victory laugh. Win before you win. All that good stuff. I'll see you guys soon. All right, thanks. Bye.